going to call this meeting to order. My name is Joe McGiverin. I am the chair of the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee. Members of the committee present at the moment are Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Bartley, Councilor Dahlman, and we're going to be shortly joined by Councilor Leahy. Other members who are present with us this evening are Councilor Murphy. And at the moment, that's it.
No, Councilor Graney.
Councilor Graney.
Councilor Graney, I just got Councilor Graney.
You know I'm here all the time, Joe. I'm just like you. I'm here all the time.
He doesn't mean to miss a meeting.
I should know that. It's the pictures that throw me off. We have an agenda, some things that are time sensitive, but nothing I think we can't get through in a fairly timely fashion. And I believe we can take care of item number 1 really quick. If I could have a motion.
Motion to take one off the table.
Second.
Motion is second to take one off the table. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? This is the second time we've placed this on the agenda. It's an application from Jonathan Maldonado. The application is for 385 Main Street. Unfortunately, it appears 385 Main Street is not the contact information, and he did not leave any other contact information. Jeff, am I correct? We have still not heard from Mr. Maldonado?
We have not. I will send another letter asking him to get in touch with me.
Okay, I appreciate that. And if we do hear from him, we'll reschedule this. So at the moment, I would suggest we just keep it in the on the table. And Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, Joe, just if you would explain to us the treasurer's office. It's missing X's by sewer, water, and G&E on that one. So can we get an update on that, please?
We can. Jeff, if we could ask the clerk to update us on taxes, water bills, sewer bills, and so forth for whenever the next meeting is.
Or is Mr. Chairman?
I could get that for you, Jeff, tomorrow.
Well, there's a procedure here that we use.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I'm sorry, Tony, you actually do most of it, don't you?
Well, yeah, I know how to get that information if, he needs help with that. So it's either through the collector or the treasurer. I'll see him tomorrow.
Well, it's supposed to be automatic.
Yeah.
Jeff shouldn't have to search for it. It should be automatically given to us with the application. Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, are we sending the invitations to the meeting to 385 Main Street?
That's the only address we have for Mr. Maldonado. Since Jeff came aboard, we've had 2 secondhand licenses, and he has worked with the clerk's office to correct that. And the application form is now going to include, is there a different contact info necessary for us to get a hold of the applicant? Because for this one, all we have is 385 Main Street, which is it's a business address.
I do know, yeah, it's been unoccupied for a long time, but I do know, I'm going to say probably in July or August, he was trying to move the process along, and I know the fire chief sent some of the fire department down there, and they could not approve the speeded up process, if you will. But I thought he gave additional contact information at the city clerk's office. I mean,
we can double check, but Jeff has already done that at least once.
Okay.
All right,
thank
you. We'll follow up on any leads we have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Leahy is with us now.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can,
Yes,
Jim.
we can.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
We're
Happy
just
to have
on
yours.
item number 1, and the motion is to table it.
Motion to
Mr.
table.
Maldonado is not here.
I'll second Councilor Bartley's motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Motion to
So
take
moved.
2 off the table.
I'll second that.
Second to take item 2 off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This is a request for a transfer from education training, $1,000, advertising, $200, professional assessment, $500, office supply, professional supplies, $1,060.28. The total is $2,760.28. Transfer from those line items into vacation buyback. We have with us our chief assessor, Tony Anthony DeLude. Mr. DeLude, would you like to walk us through this request and just let us know what you're looking for.
Well, that was just for buyback. My bill for, I might have some other money left over, but that would go towards education and training if there is any, you know. That was the big thing. There wasn't any education and training. We had some money left over there. We didn't have to advertise this year for the newspaper article for the public classification hearing. And then I had just a little left over in professional assessment, but I have to carry 5 on another account for our third assessor, Maureen Cronin. So it was just a buyback for 2 weeks. That was it for myself. So.
Okay.
And
And
it was on the
buyback,
last agenda for city council.
what's that?
This was on the agenda for city council last meeting. This particular item. So
Right, right.
this
Right,
was already,
we received it on December 15th.
yeah. So you just sent it to committee, right?
Right.
And yeah, that's automatic unless there's a request up front.
Oh,
and
okay.
Good reason.
Yeah.
So
No.
Tony, this is contractual. You're allowed to buy back.
Yeah.
And certainly under COVID, where it's difficult to use vacation time, we're
Yeah.
seeing more of these than typical in the year. Is there any questions from the committee? Any questions, Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. So just so the people at home know, when we do this means the employee didn't take any vacation throughout the year, right?
I've had a few days here and there, but I mean, I was slated to go, 2 places this year. I never went. And, with, limited office stuff, I've been in since March when everything started. So I didn't have much vacations, a day here and there, and that was it. So.
Okay, so how much vacation time do you get a year?
I get 5 weeks now.
Okay.
When I'll tell you the one thing too, when the union
Well, you
signed
don't
their
have to
new,
go into any more detail. So people at home, because people are probably thinking that he probably gets 2 weeks and he didn't take the 2 weeks, but you get 5 weeks, so therefore you took 3 weeks. And so that's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
All right. But that's about it.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, I just want to have the finance chair or Tony just explain to me the part about how it's contractual. Then I want to make a comment after that.
Yeah. Because of the weeks I get, and then the human resources sent out a memo to all departments saying that you could buy back 2 weeks or carry 2 weeks. I wasn't sure if it was both or whatever. I'm not carrying any days forward. I'm just buying them back. So, I mean, if I lose some days, I lose some days. I'm not sure if it was both buy 2 weeks and carry 2 weeks. So because of all the COVID restrictions and everything, we had a lot of people that requested, vacation buyback in a lot of departments. Now, this is strictly from our budget. It's not any cost to, out of free cash or anything. So it's just straight out of my, I think, $48,000 out of my budget, for my expenses.
Okay, so I just wasn't, Joe, can you explain, because you said it was contractual. I just wasn't clear what that meant.
I may have used the wrong term, but we have an ordinance that states with the department head and the mayor's approval within their budget is the mayor's position at the moment. If they can transfer surplus money, they can use it for reasonable requests for vacation buybacks. We've seen more of it this year than ever, and that's a lot of it's due to COVID, where, as Tony said, some people schedule vacation times, had to cancel it. Other people would like to take vacation time, but they're working, limited amount of days because you can only have so many people in City Hall at one time. This may be more by ordinance than contractual, but it's following the ordinance itself. We do have our auditor with us. If you like, we can refer to her for some more explanation.
No, I just want to have you clarify that point. And then Tony, you said there was a memo from the HR director relative
Yeah,
to
there
this?
there was a memo that was sent out and it said, you know, you could carry 2 weeks or transfer the 2 weeks if you had money in your accounts. So
Okay,
some
is
people,
that,
forego and got the 2 weeks for, added on for next year.
right? Is that something that you'd be able to forward, or do I have to ask the HR director?
I think I can find it and forward it to you. I'll find it and forward it to you.
Is the HR director still in office, or is he left? Because the job's posted, right?
I think the I'm not sure. He might be. I mean, I don't, have a tracker on him, but I mean, I would probably say he's done, but, we're still sending stuff to human resource. I know Naomi Cologne is doing a lot of the work right now, and she's been pretty good because I sent her another issue and she was right back to me. So I can forward that email to you.
Yeah, maybe that would be great, and maybe somebody could tell me if we have an HR director or not. That'd be great too. So maybe we could get an email from Naomi, or we could get an email from the auditor or somebody. Then I'm just gonna, one last comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna speak in favor of this because I just think the assessor's office, not just because it's our appointment, even though I spoke favorably about that at the last full city council meeting, but I think it's just a very well-run professional office. I think they're a credit to the city of Holyoke. I was very happy that even though pressure was put on for possibly tapping into the overlay account to balance our budget remember, if we recall all the way back 3 weeks ago when we were $4 million over the levy limit, and miraculously wow, how'd that happen? Miraculously we wound up with 599,000 in free cash. It's incredible how these things happen in the course of 3 weeks. But despite the pressure put on, the overlay account is still $500,000. That's an important baseline. And then, as I said, the office itself doesn't ask for much. I think generally, Mr. Chairman, I can't remember if and when we've made a cut to that office in my 9 years on this board. So it's a pretty well-run office, and I would speak in favor of this. Thank you.
Councilor Tallman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief question, Tony, on the one of the transfers, the professional supplies, transferring that $1,000 out. What does that leave in that account for the rest of the year?
I'm still gonna have 600, but for my billing for Randy Mercer, who we just got the bills out this week,
Right.
he was less than expected because it was more like a half a day for him. So it was better than expected, and we saved some money there. So I'll probably have an extra, another 600 for office supplies or training, education and training if we have some, some meetings.
So for the office supplies, you got enough to the end of the year?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for the work you do.
Thank you.
And Tony, just on the other three transfers, to your knowledge, at this moment in time, you have enough money to last a year for each of those line items?
Yep. No problem.
Any further discussion? Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to make sure so Tony, in effect, what we're doing here is we're paying you because you were unable to take vacation. And you could have ended up, if I'm hearing you correctly, you could have ended up taking, if it was 2 weeks, adding that to next year and have 7 weeks next year.
Yeah.
In effect, what you're doing here provides a more stable office rather than being out almost 2 months during the year. And I just want to say, I'm all in favor of that. I'm glad you have the option of taking the money and not losing that and not losing your vacation time. And I also would thank you for your efforts and not easy times, I know. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Leahy?
Mr. Chairman?
Right with you, Howie. Councilor Leahy?
He's on mute.
That hand is from last time, Joe.
That's all right.
Okay. Councilor Graney?
Yeah, I just want to thank the assessor, Mr. DeLune. Anything I've ever asked for out of his office, he's been prompt and very professional. Thank you, Tony.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, sorry, I did raise the hand a second time. Going back to what Councilor Barley had said, I just think that in today's day and age with technology and whatnot, and the lack of communication, the fact that we don't know if we have a human resource director sitting in office now. I mean, that's just wrong. That flabbergasts me. I guess that's my little editorial.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Shocking.
We're also joined by
I'll make a
Councilor
motion to recommend approval.
Bacon.
Second the motion.
Motion made and seconded to recommend that we approve the transfer request from the Assessor's Department. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Tony, you know the drill. It'll be on the agenda next Tuesday.
Yeah,
and,
that's fine. That's
we'll
fine.
put our recommendation in front of the full city council, but we appreciate you coming in, and thank you myself for all the hard work that you do.
Make a motion to take 3 off the table, Joe.
Happy New
Second
Year,
motion.
Tony.
Tony,
Hey,
all
can I-
set?
Yeah, can I tell you guys one thing? I know you have the solicitor, Crystal Barnes, in for the pilot stuff. For the item, I think it's item 5.
Yeah.
6.
I just wanted to let you know that, all the solar stuff, myself and her worked on very hard. She did a lot of the contracts with the solar that were based on the first solar that we agreed on. So part of the pilot program, which are billed now separately, there's 10 of them right now that are solar programs that are getting billed through the city on the residential or personal property tax side. So whatever that, is explained to her from the pilot programs, those were taken out of all of our pilot payments, and we are taxing them right now. We have been for the last 2 years. They've gotten bills. So that's one thing they don't have to worry about. It gets billed, and then I'm going to work with John Zwerko again this year and make sure that the megawatts and everything is all up to date. And I've been working with him also from the G&E for those 10 pilot programs. So I just wanted to keep you up to date on that too.
Tony, thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right. I'll see you guys. Thank you.
Seconded to take up item 2. This is introduced under my name and in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council accepts the provisions of the fiscal 2021 Municipal Road Safety Program grant, authorizes the establishment of a fund and or other method appropriate for the accounting of receipts, expenditures, and of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Motion is to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We have Sergeant Hart with us. John, if you could join us. I know you're on 2 different phones or 1 phone, and
He sent a group message to all of us.
Jeff, do we have audio with Sergeant Hart?
Yeah, do you hear me now?
Okay, we can hear
Yes.
you now. Thank you. John, you do all the grants for the police department, so we're going to do both of these separately, but can you walk us through how much it is? Is there any matching funds, and then be prepared for any questions?
Okay, I just had the burn grant, so I'm pulling up the other grant, the municipal one. So just bear with me for a minute. All right, I have to go into a separate. All right. sorry about the delay.
That's okay. I should have picked up on what you were doing. We could have gone with the berms first, but
Yeah, if we can do the burns, and I can kind of navigate through this as I talk.
Motion to take up item number 4, Mr. Chairman.
motion made and seconded to
Second.
take up item number 4 before item number 3. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved.
Aye.
Somebody read it into the record first, and then John will be yours. Also introduce under my name a request to accept the grant, Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A, known as the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice, we call it the JAG grant, for fiscal year 2021. This would also ask or allow the authorization and establishment of a fund that would be appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. On a motion to take off the table for discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we have Sergeant Hart with us from the police department. John, could you run us through this one?
Yeah, so this one is it's actually the state JAG grant. So we're like a subrecipient from the state, and the amount is for $7,942. And it's no match. And Councilor Leahy can vote on this.
Okay, thank you, sir.
It's just for actually for 10 mountain bikes we're putting in for. And it is over the 5,000, so we'll be going out to get bids, and we're gonna try to keep things local within the city to get the bids, hopefully to get 10 mountain bikes with that amount.
And John, tell us what you use the mountain bikes for.
We use it for community policing and just patrols. Sometimes we use it like in the past we had prior to COVID, the mobile community policing, where we had the mobile community policing truck out in certain hotspot areas, and we would have the mountain bikes deploy and patrol in and around those areas. So with the COVID, we're just not having that mobile community policing vehicle around. However, we're still utilizing the foot patrols and bike patrols in the hotspot areas.
And what's the total cost for the 10 bikes?
$7,942.
With that, is that the grant? How much is the grant?
$7,942.
Okay, but I thought you said you needed additional money.
No.
Okay, sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah, no, we're just going to try and get as many bikes as we can. We're hoping to get 10 for that amount.
I make a motion to approve the grant.
Second.
Motion made second to approve. Under discussion, Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just under discussion, because we'll all vote to approve, and I appreciate that. Yeah, Sergeant, what's the timing of this? When do we expect to receive the revenue, and when do we expect to put it out to bid?
I'm gonna go out and solicit some quotes, and then I'll give those quotes to purchasing, and let Laurie make the decision, and we'll take it from there. Then I'll go to whoever is chosen, the vendor, and let them know that they were awarded, and we'll go out and purchase those bikes.
Okay, so so do we have the grant?
Yes, we do.
Oh, so we already received it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when do we receive it?
I don't have the date. It was
Does
maybe
Tanya
in
know?
October.
Tanya,
Maybe in October.
Tanya, do you know when we got it?
I don't understand what you mean. When he was awarded it, I don't believe we have any funding in for it at the moment.
No, this is a reimbursement grant.
The communication.
It's a reimbursement. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sergeant. Oh, it's a reimbursement grant. Oh, okay. So just so I'm clear on this, So just, do we have to suspend the rules to have time to speak, Joe? Does it matter?
No, she's here
Okay,
as a
Okay,
support.
okay, all right. Okay, so Tanya, all right, so on a reimbursement grant, how does that work now? What happens here? The city of Holyoke has to purchase some money from the vendor, and then the city of Holyoke is reimbursed by the grant authority?
Correct.
Okay. All right, and do we, yeah, how does that work now? Do we, okay, so Holyoke will buy the 10 bikes. We will take in the inventory, and then at some point in time, we approve this thing, and then, and how fast is the turnaround? Do you have any sense of that, Sergeant or Tanya?
No, it is, as soon as we make the purchase, then I'll immediately submit the reimbursement, and then it'll be up to the federal government. Usually, it's within 30 days the turnaround.
Okay, so in the meantime, what funding is there a funding source that's used for this, Sergeant or Tanya, to purchase it, or do we just get the bid in, and then we don't spend any money until we actually get the money from the granting authority? Yeah,
so the way it works is a new fund is established with that grant amount, $7,942. So once we purchase the bikes, the charge will go towards that fund. So technically, that fund would be in the red for $7,942. Then I'll submit a reimbursement, and that reimbursement will offset that $7,942, and it'll be zeroed.
Okay, so Tanya, do you follow that?
Yes.
Okay, well, obviously, Tanya, and I follow it too, but obviously we've had how many grants in the last 2 fiscal years that we had to reimburse, so we got dinged on? What was it, about 75?
Grant accounts?
Yes, grant accounts.
Yes, probably. I didn't count them to
yes,
date,
they've been grant accounts.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Many of them, and I'm going to say the plurality of them, were for HPD. Is that not accurate?
There was quite a bit, yes.
A lot. Like the last time I saw a list, it was
yes.
well over 30.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not being mean here. I hope I'm not being mean. I just want us to, realize, the past that we had unfunded grants that have negatively impacted Holyoke's financial position. And I'm not suggesting the burn grant, because this is a world famous one, but we've had others. So I really want the auditor, again, our appointee, to really stay on top of this. And I'm sure you're working hand in glove with Sergeant Hart and Chief Febo and et cetera, but I can't emphasize it enough. And then my last point, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Sergeant, you've been great in terms of responding to the ordinance that Mr. Leahy and I kind of shepherded. So I definitely want to get a feedback as to when we take possession of the bikes, what vendor was utilized, and then that'll be that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things following up on Councilor Bartley. I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think we could have accounts go into red. So I'm wondering if it would make sense to have a transfer out of equipment in the police department, and then as the grant we get reimbursed, that goes back into the police department equipment account, so that there's a trail that we spent it and a trail that we're receiving it. That's just, and I kind of agree with Councilor Bartley. That would create a very easy trail to follow. We just spent the $7,900 out of the equipment account. We got the reimbursement. It goes back into the police equipment account. The other aspect of this, beyond the financial, first of all, I think it's a great idea to have bikes. I've been an advocate of it. I remember former officer Dave O'Connell, way back when he was a young police officer, asking me to file an order to start having bike patrols. So Sergeant Hart, do we have specific officers that do the bike patrols? Is it something they volunteer for? Is it something they're assigned? And is the bike something they take care of, or is it something that is transferred from one officer to the other?
Yeah, it gets transferred from one officer to the other. They're kept and maintained at the police department. Everyone's allowed or available to put in for these details and utilize bikes for the details.
Okay, all right. And I just, from an aspect of both, I mean, I had someone this past summer on a bike coming by here and stopping and saying, how's things going? I think it does help with community relations. I also think it gives us better access, and I'll go to the alley between Maple and High and Sargent and Hampshire. It gives us better access to those kind of alleys and places where people might run to get out of things. So I think it's a home run for the city, and I want to thank the officers for stepping up and doing it. And thank you, Sergeant Hart, for continuing to find resources for us to provide the service that we need to provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Chairman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McGiverin. Chairman, Officer Hart, thanks for the work you do. Just a quick question on the bikes, and I see you're trying to get 10 of them at least with that funding. How you got an estimated time on what the lifespan of a bike is with a mountain bike with the police department?
No, I don't. I know down in the basement, I know we still have bikes down there.
Right.
We've kind of been cannibalizing just to keep some old ones running, but those have been in there for 20 years at least.
Okay. And I agree with Councilor Murphy. I think it's important to have the bikes out there, even if you get a couple in certain areas, certain hotspots, for the community policing, and to let people know that they're out there, not just in their cars or walking, that they're out there on the bikes. That's very important for the public to see that. So thank you for the work you're doing, getting the resources.
Councilor Graney?
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, just a quick follow-up to Sergeant Hart. As far as the vendor is concerned, I know we have local vendors in Holyoke that sell and service bicycles, like the Highland Hardware Bike Shop. I mean, these bikes could be maintained certainly within the framework of the city. So I'm hoping that vendors like this are going to be given certainly all the consideration in the world to supply the Holyoke Police Department. Thank you.
Yes, they're one of the ones that we're going to be soliciting. Them and Competitive Edge are two, just off the top of my head, that we're going to seek quotes from.
Thank you, Sergeant Hart.
You're welcome.
John, Sergeant Hart, is there the bikes that former Chief Scott took off the road? Are there any of those still hanging around?
Actually, we had another burn grant that I got some bikes from previously, and those are still around. Yeah, we still have those. I'm not sure how many, maybe 5, 6.
From an inventory point of view, number one, and number two, a suggestion: when the bike is no longer in the shape that where it can be used for police work, would it make sense to donate them? To someone like I know we have a regional guy who does a lot of work on bikes for underprivileged kids. Do we keep track of the bikes, and once they are no longer useful, or do we donate them? And do we, through the inventory process, do we make sure that they're taken off the inventory?
Yeah, we do donate when we have that opportunity. And I know in the past we used to auction them off. I remember at the annex building, I think every year we would auction off some seized bikes that were unaccounted for, and people didn't come back to pick them up, and they're kind of like lost property. And I know a few years back, that's what they used to do, is have an auction for those bikes.
I hope someone's keeping track of inventory though, just to, you know, I don't doubt it's all done correctly, but you know, we should keep, you know, the auditor, you know, ever looks at it, not our auditor, the outside auditor, you know, or the state ever looks at it. You know, we need to account for all this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Councilor Graney?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, you know, the Hoyoke Boys and Girls Club certainly would be a very worthy organization to think about donating something like this to. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think there's plenty of good suggestions, and I agree with you, Councilor Graney, and I think Sergeant Hart is hearing us that, you know, we need to be accountable too, though. We can't just donate the bike after we buy it, use it for X amount of months or years, and then, you know, not have a paper trail of where the bike went. John, I'm not going to be as nice as the rest of the city council. I'm ready to vote no on this. And I want to hear from you, and in the future, of how we're going to correct the problem of deficit spending within these grants. This is not the money doesn't come in from the grant. The burn grant has never reneged on any of the money that they have awarded to the city. What happens is there is a problem when our outside auditor looks at the end to close out the budget, looks at the end of the fiscal year, and sees deficit spending within the budget itself. Now that could mean a number of different things. That could mean that number one, you know, something was posted to the wrong fiscal year. Some of these grants are carryovers, or some of these grants are repeating each year. It could mean that someone, you know, accidentally maybe overspent money on a particular grant. The police department's not the worst department. The school department's the worst right now. I don't agree with all that the independent auditor is telling us, but it cost us in deficit, and it wasn't all grants, in deficit spending $2 million this year of free cash that we could have had. And I know the police department's got some deficit line items in terms of needs for overtime, in terms of needs in other areas, some vacation buybacks that are going to be coming before the mayor very shortly. Can you tell me why, after we went through this last year, we should accept any grants for the police department?
Yeah, I can tell you that sometimes at the end of the year, we don't have all the invoices in, and by the time I get those invoices and then submit for reimbursement, that fund may appear in the negative. However, my reimbursement, because I was waiting on some of the vendors to submit their invoices, was delayed, so it would show in a deficit. However, that money is coming in once I submit that reimbursement. It's just not, you're just not seeing it because it's being reported as a deficit, when in fact it's just a matter of me getting those invoices in on time from the vendors, and me submitting in for a reimbursement, so I can report that to Tanya and say, look, I just sent in a reimbursement for, let's just say, the burn grant for $80,000. Well, if that comes in late, it's going to show a deficit as $80,000. And that's one of, I forget which grant, but that's kind of one of the ones that happened. And Tanya came back and said, you know, I wasn't able to get this in on time. So you're seeing, let's say that fund in deficit $80,000, when really in November, we're getting that $80,000. So it's just a matter of timing. And because of some of the personal things that happened to me this year, I wasn't able to get some of those reimbursements in on time. But it's not that those grants aren't going to be getting paid back. We're going to have that money reimbursed as I continue to submit them. So the money's there to pay those off. It's just a timing issue. That's all it is.
It's an annual timing issue. And Tanya, you're with us. You heard Sergeant Hart. If that $80,000 came in, why did we use free cash for that deficit?
Well, you have to actually submit all your reimbursements by 6:30. So if you don't do that to cover your deficit in that fund, then they do not allow for you to use that reimbursement towards that deficit. So what you have to do is you need to get those invoices, you need to process them, and you need not to continuously spend without having that at a zero balance at the end of the year. And what we could also do, if you're amenable, is at the end of the year, if those deficits exist, I can definitely transfer expenses over into your general fund accounts. So that way it makes it a zero balance until you get your reimbursement. In that case, we can switch it back.
Well, I'm not sure, what's the best method. I'm not an accountant. I'm a city councilor. I think I'm, pretty experienced with budget process. But when DLS, because of an outside auditor's review of our books, tells us we have $2 million in deficit we're going to use, which should be free cash that we can use for a number of different things that we need, I don't get it. And
if we could prove, sorry.
No, I'm not going to be a broken record here. I told you last year, I told the mayor last year, I told Sergeant Hart, I told everybody last year, correct this. Now it's very simple. It's the first time, shame on you. The second time is shame on me. I'm voting no for the grants until this is corrected. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, Joe, I've had my hand up for some time now. Yeah, so just getting back to the bicycles, what I would like to see, and I'm not sure if this can be done or not, but if, like for instance, my daughter's when she was in high school, she got a laptop, and basically we said we're going to buy the laptop after she was done using it for school, and so that way the laptop was maintained perfectly. It wasn't stolen. It wasn't dropped. She had ownership of it. I wish there's a way that we could get the police officers to own their bikes essentially when they're done with them. So each officer who had a bike would maintain it perfectly, because at the end of the day, they're going to own it themselves. Is there a way we could do that?
If you can get 120 bicycles, or the amount of bicycles that officers are willing to.
Well, we don't have 120 officers now. How many do we have? We have less than 80.
Well, 100. No, that's patrolmen and supervisors too. So it's about 117. But anyways, in the past we used to have officers on designated bike patrol who had their own bikes. However, when we come up with a grant detail like the MCP going out, it's offered to everyone. So everyone.
Okay, so what are we doing on our oversight to making sure that these bicycles don't sit in a basement somewhere, basically ruined?
No, they're being utilized throughout the year.
Okay, no, but you had said moments ago that there's a plethora of different bikes that have been sitting there, for 20. Let me ask you this: Chief Scott brought in a bunch of Segways. Where are those located?
Those are in the parking garage there, where we have our maintenance of our cruisers.
Are they still being utilized?
No, they're not.
So maybe for a revenue source, maybe we can put those up and sell those. I don't know how we sell them. I mean, you guys have done it before, municipal property. How about get those off the books and sell those, because I can't imagine those batteries are still useful any longer.
Yeah, I agree.
How many of those do we own?
I don't know offhand, maybe 5. I'm not sure.
Okay, so I mean, Councilor McGiverin, he made some very valid points. It seems like we're stuck doing this year after year, and this thing actually puts a red flag with our outside auditor, and this just ties up money that we could be used elsewhere. I mean, we're obviously going to pay our bills, but when it ties up money that we could be utilizing elsewhere, it's it's hard to explain to the constituents what's happening. I'm going to vote for this. I think this is a good thing. I think having bicycles throughout the city, whether wards 1 through 7, is a great thing. I know years ago you guys also went out and bought stickers, little police chief stickers. I just remember seeing that the officers were down at down near the merry-go-round or the children's museum, and kids were running up to police officers excited about getting just a random sticker. And this just showed that little kids were coming up and the police were on their side, and this was just I thought it was a good community relations thing. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. In fact, I'll make a motion to do so, and we just have to get everything timely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I'd like to address here is, as far as what we spoke about with Tanya earlier, and free cash, whether it happens at the end of the year because of an order from DLS, or whether we do it 6 months prior to that, we're still using free cash. Either way, it's the same common denominator. We're using free cash for something we shouldn't be using free cash for. So either way, that's not right. The thing I'd like to differentiate here with some of these grants, this one in particular is strictly tied to a vendor payment. It's not being used for wages and to support efforts out there, or for training or other things like that. It's strictly a purchase of asset. An easy way to handle it and to assure there's never a deficit in it, when you put out the terms and conditions, this is a common business practice, is you put it out there that the vendor, whoever it is they're going to submit their invoice. Then the invoice will get submitted to the grant, whether it's the burn grant or whichever one it is, and they'll get paid when we get reimbursed. It's that simple, when we get the money in. And if they have to wait 30 days, if they have to wait 60 days, that's part of the terms and conditions when you bid on this, and factor it into your bid. And then we're not worrying about having a deficit on it. They'll get paid when we get paid. Now, I completely agree with Councilor McGiverin. I would, as far as some of these other grants where it's not tied to something like that, where we're depending on paperwork coming out and accounting coming out of one of the departments that's going to wages and other things like that, that we've got to start thinking about whether we're going to accept some of these grants. And I think some of this we also address in the next order, in order number 5, as we talk about what's being spent on overtime. Let's see, terms and conditions, and with all of them, it's not a matter of timing. All right, I heard what Sergeant Hart said there. All right, but despite that, all right, there's ones that, even accounting for timing, they never come in. Plain and simple, we never get them, and the money's already been spent, and it's too late, and we're not going to see it. And I'm not putting words into Councilor McGivern's mouth here, but I think there's a huge difference there, and this is what we're really trying to get to the heart of, is the ones we never get reimbursed for.
Councilor Barley?
Okay, yeah, Joe, Mr. Chairman, I just have a point of order, because this is kind of, this discussion is going to lead to an unusual motion by me, but I don't know if I can even make it. So can we add conditions to this grant, for example, add conditions to the grant acceptance, for example, one, that we get a follow-up from the awardee relative to the what was done with the grant money. That's one. And second of all, that we make payment to the vendor subject to reimbursement included in whatever solicitation we make to the public. Can we do that?
The simple answer is we cannot. on any grant, on any appropriation, a grant is essentially an appropriation by accepting the award. We cannot amend. We can only vote yes or no, up or
Okay.
down. But if you remember, I read it every week when we do these things, but I slowly read the language this year, and this is standard language, that by accepting the grant, we are also authorizing the establishment of a fund or method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Now, I've been doing some talking behind the scenes, and our auditor has been being a little bit more proactive. Well, she's always proactive, but proactive on this issue this year. And she is, I don't want to steal her thunder, and it's going to be at a separate meeting. She has reached out to some other local auditors about how they handle this, because there are occasionally grants where the money just doesn't come in after it's awarded. But the bulk of the list this year is money that was there, and it was for some reason, and Councilor Hart, I'm sorry, John, didn't mean to demote you. Sergeant Hart, is correct. That, there are things for posting. A big part of the problem is posting at the end of the year. But it's the way our outside auditor, when they're calculating free cash, they say it's not free cash if you have deficits over here. And if you look at we had the list 12 months ago. There's a new list coming out for this year. There's some redundancy, but there's also some stuff that just, as I said last year, and never got an answer, because it's not the independent outside auditor. It's Department of Local Services, Department of Revenue, who's telling us they're taking this free cash to correct this deficit this year. And if the money comes in and 30 days later, that's fine. But do you think that means that the free cash is going to be freed up? That's not the way it works. You may go back into the general fund and it just becomes a cycle. Free cash for the next year. Now, I'm not happy with the answer we never got from Division of Local Services, but I'm very unhappy that the mayor said this year when he was before us in his special meeting that this is something that he wants to look into. The same thing we heard 12 months ago. We're 12 months later. I'm not. 12 months ago, I was mad. I was mad at Division of Local Services. I was mad that we had this situation. I'm not mad. It's not corrected. I'm voting no.
All right. Well, I'm ready to make a motion, Joe, if I can make it. But I see Councilor Sullivan's hand up, so.
No, I got to take that down.
Okay. Well, there is a motion on the floor. It was already made and seconded.
Well, I'll second just in case. I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, you did second, and Councilor Tallman seconded. The motion was by Councilor Leahy to recommend that the grant be accepted and to adopt.
Just under discussion,
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, just can you expand, if you will, without giving anything away about the thunder that we're going to hear coming from the auditor, please?
Well, we're waiting for Melanson and Heath to be available to come in to explain both the 2019 closing of that fiscal year, but also that was the audit that we received not too long ago, but also to explain, as they did last year with Tanya came in to with the report on free cash that went to the Department of Local Services, and the use of this year it was a little over $2 million. And I think we deserve an explanation this year, and maybe we have to go through each of those items one by one. Now we some changes were made. They were including at one point the deficit in the wastewater treatment plant, and we certainly we're going to have the schools in to talk about the deficits within their budget. The problem with the schools is without a school committee that can vote, and the fact that we're in receivership, and even with a school committee that that votes, we don't see the grants the school committees accept and are awarded up front. We only hear about it when they're in deficit spending at the end of the year. So I think that's a double problem with the school budget, because that's my what I said, and I'll stand by it, is it's called what I call taxation without representation, because the DOR is using free cash to balance the school budget, which is something we have no control over right now. We don't vote on this. We vote on our portion of what we required, and it's sometimes more than what we required. But on our local dollars that are used for schools, which we understand, and we understand Chapter 70s is accepted, and this year is maybe a bad example because Chapter 70s was only 2 weeks ago voted upon by the final Chapter 70 award was only voted upon by the state government and finalized. But I'm speaking way too much for tonight. I just wanted to explain my vote on this grant tonight.
Yeah.
Councilor Bartley?
Because I asked a question, Joel. So, Mr. Chairman, so that's you weren't speaking too much on that in this regard. So let me stop you there. But I just want to point out. I'll just make one small point or two small points. One is that the Melanson Heath letter you referenced is dated June 30th, 2019. So if the public is watching us, don't think that we have the most current information because we don't. The one we have is what we have. I mean. And second of all, through the chair to my friend Councilor Greeny and anybody else, the auditor was nice enough to procure for me hard copy documents of the financial reports, the management letter, the financial statements. So they're helpful to me to have a hard copy as opposed to reading on a screen, which I loathe. And so just to my friend, Councilor Greeny and anybody else, I'm sure that Tanya can probably get your hard copy too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, I appreciate Councilor Bartley's concern.
Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is that this grant be accepted to adopt the recommendation to the full city council next week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 4, 1 opposed. Carries 4-1. Sergeant Hart, that'll be reported out of committee for next Tuesday. Can you now bring us through item number 2, the Municipal Road Safety Program grant?
Three, Joe.
Item three off the board.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I do know that it is for $32,000. This is
$32,400.
Yep, and what the state did this year was kind of, in the past we had the STEP grant and we also had the traffic enforcement grant. So what they did this year, actually the traffic enforcement grant was for all the municipalities in the state. The STEP grant was only for, I believe, 14 municipalities. So what they did was they combined both those, the STEP and traffic enforcement grant, into one municipal grant available to all municipalities. So that gave us the $32,400, and that's to be used divided by 5. They have 5 traffic mobilizations. Some like click it and ticket, some like drive sober, get pulled over, those type of mobilizations. So I don't have the dates for each mobilization. I can get those to all the city councilors. But one of them is going on right now, which from December 16th until January 23rd. So we'll have to spend that fifth of that $32,400 within this month prior to the 23rd. Otherwise, we'll lose that money, and that money does not carry over to the next mobilization. So you use it or you lose it.
John, so you put in for 5 mobilizations, and when you say spend it, is there any match?
No, there's no match, and Councilor Leahy can vote on this because it's traffic for
what exactly does it pay for? Is it salaries? Is it overtime?
Yeah, it pays for overtime for officers conducting traffic enforcement. And part of the traffic enforcement is each officer has to make 3 stops in every hour. And if they don't make 3 stops in every hour, they have to report as to why they didn't, whether it was an arrest or some extenuating circumstances. That's all reported that on their sheets, and I report that to the state. So that's, and we do 4-hour details at different times and different dates.
Does the money include the benefits and the retirement and the rest of it that goes with the hours worked?
No, it just goes strictly to their overtime hours. So whatever that officer makes an hour for overtime times 4 hours, that's what gets paid. That's what I seek reimbursement for, whatever is paid to them in overtime.
And do we get any administrative costs taken out of the 32,400?
No.
So it's all strictly salary for police officers that are working the
Yes.
actual detail.
Correct.
Councilor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask if Sergeant Hart could repeat the timeline for the enforcement on the traffic, because I know out here in Ward 5, I've been filing a lot of orders, and I know many other counselors have as well. And we've been hearing repeatedly that there was no money for overtime, so the enforcement has been limited. And so I'm wondering if the areas that have been brought forth over the last few months are being prioritized for this particular time frame, if Sergeant Hart could address that.
Yeah, so what it is I have to submit to the state, kind of like we did in the past with the step or 10 most dangerous intersections, and which areas are and intersections that we're going to patrol in and around. And that's kind of what we designate our officers to do. As far as the timelines, like I said, I don't have the dates for the other 4. However, one of them is going on right now. It started, I believe, December 16th, going to January 23rd. And again, these are specific mobilizations. Like some of them are click it to ticket. So when the officers go out, they're kind of looking for those types of violations, whether they stop a car for another violation, that's fine, but we're trying to stay within the mobilizations that is on for like click it or ticket, drive sober, pulled over, those type of mobilizations.
So do we know which one we're doing now?
I don't have that in front of me. I can send it to all the counselors tomorrow. Each, I might be able to pull it up online too. It's right on the state website.
It would be really helpful, because I want to estimate that probably the majority of the calls that I get are traffic, racing, speeding related throughout the year. So it's a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could send it out tomorrow so we can have it, so I could share it with the Ward 5 residents, I'd really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, and I know, you say there's a time frame for each one of these. And I'm looking forward to getting the listing of what Councilor Bacon asked for. Is one of them in there possibly? Because I know it's an issue that I see often while driving is cell phones. We're not supposed to be using cell phones, and I still see several people using cell phones while driving. So I'm just wondering if that could be one of them, because that's a serious issue, and it does cause several accidents throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking on the site now. So as we keep talking, I can.
Okay. And with this, is this, you got 5 different areas, right? You said, does this?
No, 5 different time frames.
Time frames. Does this end at the end of June?
September.
Oh, it goes to September. So the end, September 30th?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Joe.
Councilor Barley?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Sergeant. Thanks for the good questions, because those are kind of my wheelhouse, but I just want to go beyond that. So if we can, well, one, I very much would like to see the dates myself, because I'd like to publish it in my newsletter for sure. I'd also like to have us consider making the dates public to like the Holyoke Sun or wherever else, so they can. I mean, I think just great things, Sergeant, just to let the public know, the readers know, and the Sun and the Reminder, whatever else media, that HPD is aware of this stuff, and now you're put on warning. You, the motoring public, is put on notice that HPD is on point on this. And I'll tell you, it's fantastic when I see on Whiting Farms, or I mean, when HPD was on Lawler Street picking off people running the stop sign there. It was, I mean, the whole neighborhood was. I mean, on Homestead Avenue, when you're parked up at the gate at HCC or at the Soldiers Home on Cherry, I mean, the whole public is like, wow, psyched, because HPD is on point. So I'd like to have you do that if you would consider it. And then sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you have your pencil ready, if everyone has their pencil ready, I have those dates.
Do you want to announce them?
Sure, I can do that. So the first one that's going on now, it's called the Winter Impaired Driving, and it's from December 16th to January 23rd. The second mobilization is called the April Distracted Driving, and Counselor Tallman, this is where that cell phone use while driving would be enforced during this April Distracted Driving, and that goes from April 2nd to April 18th. The third one is in May, and that's the click it or ticket. So we're looking for seatbelt violations for that one. And that one's from May 17th to May 31st. The fourth one is a speeding one. It's called June Speed, and that's from June 11th to June 27th. And the final one is called the Summer Impaired Driving, and that's from August 20th to September 6th.
Yeah, so sorry, just to continue. So you're just telling us the dates. You're not telling us where you're going to be. I mean, I think that's. I mean, I don't think we're giving away state secrets by doing that. So, that's great news. And then just the last point, Mr. Chairman, to the chair, to Sergeant Hart. So you indicated that you have to give a report to the Commonwealth on this.
Correct.
Okay, so since that's a public record, see that's all I would want on that ordinance which you're familiar now. You can just attach. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's what I've been sending you. So
right,
pretty much what you're getting is what I'm submitting to the state as well.
Yeah, so Sergeant, so that's fantastic. And so I mean, I'm just reflecting back on a prior finance meeting, but I think we were monopolizing your time, and that's not what we want to do. Not what any of us want to do is monopolize your time on reports to the city council. Just want to make it as straightforward and as simple as possible. And so that's really intense. So if you can just cut and paste that, attach it to an email to us, and that'll check that box so that you comply with it. And that's all I'm looking for. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Sergeant Hart, does the grant mandate overtime?
It pays for overtime. I don't know what your question is.
Well, I'm saying if we had enough officers on a shift that could be doing this without paying overtime, would we still be able to get the money? I mean, if this is an assistance for us to do it, but we have on a particular shift, we're all set and we can do it without overtime and do the job correctly. My question is, does the grant mandate the use of overtime, or does it allow the chief and his command to determine we can do these 4 hours in our regular shift, and these 4 hours we would have to have overtime?
Normally on a shift, if we're above minimum manning, we would normally have a traffic car in addition to the regular patrol,
Right.
which would respond to accidents and do traffic enforcement as well. But to take an extra officer, so I think these are 4-hour shifts, so it would be difficult. And what would happen was, if you were going to pay an officer straight time while he's on his shift, let's say from 12 to 4,
Yep.
If for whatever reason that cars get tied up and they have to pull that officer from the detail, and they're not able to do their 3 stops an hour, then we'd have to report that, and it just makes things a lot more difficult.
But if we did that and we had to pull that person off, we could also just go and create another 4-hour shift some other time. And again, I don't know what the mandate is, but I certainly want to get the traffic enforcement, because I agree with each counselor. We need to do a more consistent job on that. But if we can get the grant money in without necessarily having to use overtime, and we still get that money into the police department, we'd be in a situation where we'd be able to do other things as well. We would still do the mandate for the 4-hour shifts and to try to live up to everything else, but that money could also go towards helping us fully staff the police department. I know you said we used to have a traffic department and now we don't have it. So, I mean, there's a perfect example of potentially being able to use some additional funds. So, I would like to get a clarification if it is mandated that it has to be overtime. So I would appreciate that. I mean, I'm not going to, I support the idea of the grants. I support trying to go out and get things. And I've always kind of looked at the grants as an ability to support that organization and their mission. And I think that does that. But again, I think when they start to tell you this is what you have to do for that grant, they're allowing us to do certain things, but they're not helping us do the day-to-day job throughout the police department. So again, if I can just find out, Sergeant, if you don't mind, if it is mandated or if it's just, they want the 4-hour shifts, I'd appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Officer Sullivan?
And if I can just talk about that. So there's a couple issues with that. One of them is scheduling. We try to schedule in advance, so we have a certain amount of officers lined up to do those details, to spend down that money. We can't schedule it in advance by the patrol division. Let's say on day shift, we can't go through and say, oh, is there going to be officers? Are you going to have extra officers on the 21st, let's say? And if they say yes, and then, okay, so now we're planning on the 21st. Well, now all of a sudden on the 20th, people call out sick. So now we don't have that. Now we don't have an officer to do the detail. So now we have a potential possibility of losing that grant money if we don't spend it in time. So the other issue is, we feel that having more officers and patrol cars out on the road at a given time is more beneficial to the city for various reasons. Those cars are able to intervene with different violent crimes or murders or homicides while they're doing patrols. If you're actually taking cars off the road by just putting it into patrol. So those are just some of the issues that I
appreciate your thoughts on that, Sergeant. I would say this, and one of my goals, and one of the goals of the order that I file after, is to try to get the maximum number of officers, and in the fire department's case, firefighters, that we can have, so that we can reduce the potential of having to use overtime. The other thing I would counter you with would be, yes, if we thought we had enough on the 21st, and then someone didn't show up, and we needed somebody, we would call somebody in on overtime anyway. So they would, in effect, be getting called in to do that as well. So, I mean, my goal is to be at maximum effectiveness in terms of public safety, in terms of doing these kind of things, with the need for as minimal amount of overtime as possible. And again, I'm not trying to downgrade the police department. I'm trying to, if I can, I'm trying to make sure it has the resources that it needs to be more cost effective. Thank you.
Yeah. Just so you know,
Yep.
don't get confused with our overtime budget and this money, because nothing in the police department overtime comes out of grants. So it's strictly within that grant. It doesn't, no grants affect our overtime line item budget.
Okay. Thank
John,
you.
does that mean if an officer works a shift, they don't get paid till you get reimbursed?
No, they get paid, and then
Where do they get paid out of?
They get paid just like a grant fund, just like we discussed earlier.
You don't have the reimbursement grants, so they can't get paid till you get reimbursed, or they get paid out of the city budget side first. Then we reimburse the city budget, right?
Right, out of that fund. No, it doesn't come out of the city budget. That fund kind of goes into the red. Let's say it was $6,000 for the mobilization. Well, I got until the 15th, or like 15 days after the end of that to submit reimbursement. So once it's probably one pay period that gets affected, maybe two. So that amount will be, let's say, $6,000 in the red in that fund. So by the 15th, I'll submit the reimbursement to pay that fund $6,000, and then it would be zero. So no money.
What's that?
Do you agree with that?
I didn't hear what he said. I'm sorry.
When a mobilization takes place and a police officer works a shift on the grant money, X amount of dollars for that shift, that money is paid through the grant only, or is it taken out of the city line item for overtime, then reimbursed?
No, that goes straight to the grant fund.
And if it's reimbursable, when the officer submits his time, does he have to wait for the money to come in from the grant?
They get paid in their normal payroll. It runs into
the money
deficit,
come from
and then
if the money hasn't come back in yet?
those are the deficits, the reimbursable grant. So it will stay in deficit until the reimbursement comes in and is put against those expenses in the grant fund.
This year, DLS, Independent Audit, Melanson and Heath cited one deficit in the fiscal 2019 for the sustained traffic enforcement of $4,308, in fiscal 20, $478, and there were 2 or 3 other smaller ones. This is what's happening. And they used free cash to correct those deficits. Am I right?
They don't actually correct the deficit. They take it out. They take it out of your free cash calculation. And then when that money comes in and the deficit is, well, the deficit should be cured the next year, then that will no longer impact your free cash. It will be a zero balance.
We've had no free cash for 2 years because free cash has been used Why isn't the free cash coming back if the grants are being reimbursed?
It would come back the next year as soon as the deficit is cured.
Well, I'm reading last year's list right now. We didn't get any money back, did we?
Well, you would have had to have had that deficit cured the next year. So they just do it in total.
Thank you.
As these are cured, it goes into your free cash for the following year. It doesn't cure them unless they say we have to write them off on the tax recap. If we put it on the tax recap, we cure it, we give it a zero balance, and we can't, no, they can't any longer use that fund. I flag it off. So those accounts that we actually had to pay off, we did, and they're flagged, and nobody can use them now.
Thank you. Counselor Sullivan.
Thank you. So, to Counselor McGivern's point on the last one, I'm not going to be voting for accepting this grant. And the reason is, just like the wording, what we're supposed to get is an accounting of the expenditures, right? And this, back in the spring, we kind of made a point of this with one of the grants, and I think it might have been the STEP grant, that we really wanted to see an accounting of how the monies were spent. And one of the points we were making at that time was the bang for a buck that we get when we use patrolmen as opposed to using supervisors to do this work. Now, and we were told the patrolmen would be utilized to the maximum effect possible, all right? So when we got the accounting, the last one I saw, all it gave us was the results. How many stops, how much this, what percent that. It gave us no financial information, which is what the grants call for, an accounting of the expenditures, right? So I'm looking right now at last year, one supervisor alone had 148 hours of overtime associated with traffic enforcement and STEP grants. That would have equated to 296 hours had a patrolman do it. And constantly, we're seeing the problem over and over again where the council is being told, when we ask for additional traffic enforcement, we need more overtime. Well, here's the time that could have been spent on that traffic enforcement, and we're not getting the bang for our buck. We're not getting the hours that we should be getting for that money. And I'm looking down the list and I see supervisor after supervisor after supervisor on these traffic enforcement grants. And one of the questions asked earlier is how much is spent on administration? Right now, and then to have the deficit problem, which is mostly associated, I believe, not with buying bicycles or buying radios and stuff like that, but with ones that are strictly associated with wages. So right now, until we start getting accounting of how the money is spent, I won't be voting for this. Okay, if I can,
Sergeant Hart, yeah.
If I can address some of that. So the way these grants are distributed is they're put out to the whole department via email in accordance with our contracts. So we have 3 patrolmen and 1 supervisor for each 4-hour patrol. So that's put out for the entire department. And I know Captain Pratt has a list of all of these. And we just don't have the patrolmen. So this is a volunteer thing. These officers aren't ordered to go out and do traffic. So you don't have officers putting in, you don't have patrolmen putting in for these details. And if you do, it's the same handful of them, maybe 5, maybe 6 of the same patrolmen. Not 90 patrolmen putting in for it, 5 or 6 patrolmen. And on certain days, so on one mobilization, you might have 1 patrolman put in for that 4-hour shift. Well, that leaves 3 openings. So supervisors volunteer to work. So those positions are filled with supervisors. And that's how these mobilizations work. So, and again, you're going to have the same 5 or 6 supervisors who like to do traffic patrol. Not every officer likes to do traffic, so it's a volunteer thing that's happening. So if you're seeing more supervisors, it's because the patrolmen are not putting in for it.
Councilor Sullivan, you all set?
Yeah.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is to Tanya, our auditor. I'm wondering, with this grant accounting and the reconciliation for the free cash, are you able to differentiate between what is a timing issue that is going to run from year to year without any dramatic difference from one year to another versus what is a failure to document adequately to ever receive the reimbursement under the grant, whether it's a technical issue or a timing issue? Because I can understand at the end of a year how there would be some accruals, like with payroll, that would occur every year. But are you able to differentiate between those two things?
So I'm going to say no to that because I really don't have a plethora of information on these grants. So what I have in my office is just the outline of the grants, what they can spend it on, and a lot of the information that you probably receive in your orders. So I can't tell when they're filing their reimbursements. So unless I see a consistent cash base come in, I don't know when they file their reimbursements. I don't know what their deadlines are. I don't know if it's monthly. I don't know if it's quarterly. So what I can say is, as a grant manager, on 6/30, you should say, this is the deficit I have in my account. Therefore, I should have a reimbursement for that same amount out there to provide to the external auditor, and then they cure that deficit with that receipt. But they actually have to provide a document.
Right. So at this point in time, the only people that would hold those documents are within the departments that are receiving the grants. Is that true?
That's correct. It's the same people that stand in front of you and say they are going to file their reimbursements in a timely fashion.
So is there a legal way for you to have control over that as the auditor of any sort?
I'm going to be honest with you right now. There's I don't know how many grant funds. So
Right.
If I had to spend all my time managing other people's grants, you definitely wouldn't pay me for what I should actually be doing, which is monitoring.
Right. And so I think I might not have asked the question exactly the right way. I'm not suggesting that I think you should be managing the grants, but what I'm wondering is if there is a way where there's a way that before the end of the fiscal year, where you're simply providing an accounting to the state, where we end up with this big correction each year, that throughout the year, there's a way that periodically you have a legal ability to require all of the departments that have these various grants to say, true it up every quarter with you.
So that is why I have requested from the mayor. I think I might have brought this up. And one of the ideas that I've received from other auditors is what they do is they flag all of their grants. So as soon as you go to make a purchase, as soon as you go to make an expense, a requisition, it's on hold. You need to call me. You need to then I can make sure I have all the documentation. I can get the information about when they're going to be doing their reimbursement. So then I can in turn take the time to go back and make sure that's actually done. So.
Okay. And that sounds perfect. Does our system have the capability for you to be able to implement that easily, or is that another huge project?
No, from what I've read, I got the instructions from the Chicopee auditor. It looks like a very simple process. The only thing it's going to be is timely gathering all that information from people, but that can be easily done with a phone call, an email. So I feel pretty confident it won't hold up, their expenses.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for that. I might have made you show your hand from the next meeting, but
That's all right.
I think we need to get that going ASAP. I mean, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're just losing, that we see it after it's gone, but we don't feel it while it's sort of leaking out of the sieve,
Yes, I do.
If I can say something that
Sergeant Hart, yep.
yes, so some of the grants that we have are funded through the state, and it's not, we don't put in for reimbursement. They'll send a remittance with a lump sum like every quarter. It's sporadic. So if one of those grant funds is in deficit, I can't put in for a reimbursement because the state is just going to send that money when they want to send it. So they're obligated to pay, let's say $500,000 for the year. Well, we might get it in 250,000 increments. We might get it in 4 increments and in various times. So it's up to the state on those, and it's completely out of our control as far as submitting for reimbursements for some of those grants that may show that they're in deficit. And the other thing, on the June 30th deadline, we're supposed to submit reimbursements. Well, if I'm getting invoices a quarter from one of our partners on the grant, they can't possibly put in for a June invoice on June 30th and then have me submit that on the same day for reimbursement. It's just not possible. So we're either going to have to stop at May, and I'm going to have to tell the partners to invoice at May, and in June you'll submit the invoice in July, because we're not able to go in deficit during the June month because it'll show on the munis as being in deficit. So there has to be either a way where we can have, like most of the grants, reimbursements have to be submitted on the 15th after the end of the month. So we'd have to put in reimbursement on the 15th of July. We'd have to have it in. But if June 30th is the deadline and on July 1st it shows a deficit, then those partners who are invoicing for June, there's no way that they can send me an invoice on June 30th to show, and for me to put the reimbursement in on that same day.
Mr. Chairman, do I still have the floor?
You do, Councilor Macon.
Thank you. So what I heard our auditors say, and what I'm familiar with the accrual form of accounting, is that at the end of the fiscal year ending June 30th, typically there's a 45-day period during which all the accruals are gathered. And so if I heard our auditor's point correctly, and she can jump in and correct me if I didn't, once you hit June 30th, you're going to get all your invoices and your documentation for the reimbursement grants. What I understood her to say is if that when the auditor comes in to reconcile those accounts, they have all the money that shows that the reimbursement is there for June that arrived in July. They are not going to take that out of free cash because they can see that those things are reconciled. It's the absence of those that I'm hearing is leading to the fact that it's cutting into the free cash so much. So I think it's simply a matter of, to Tanya's point, that the communication and the documentation has to be getting to our auditor much, much more quickly so that it doesn't have such a negative impact on the audit. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you.
I'm hearing that too, and we heard that 12 months ago.
That's
this
what I
year-
heard that too.
This year, the 2016 Safe Successful Youth Initiative Grant was in deficit for $134,132. But I just heard Sergeant Hart said partners. Don, is that the Hoyok Boys and Girls Club, the South Hoyok Initiative?
At that
Roca?
time, no, it's not Roca. At that time, that grant was on the previous, was on for last year, and it was our understanding that with the that was being paid off on the last one. However, I don't think I remember this meeting last year where it was brought up. However, nothing from the police department was reconciled last year, so it carried over again to this year. So that was from back in, what did you say, 2016, and that's when we made a big change going from previous partners to Roca.
But partners are not city departments. When you say partners, you're talking about nonprofits out there.
Correct.
That the grant is funneled through the city, and I brought this up when we accepted these grants, and it's placed out with something that we cannot control. So great organizations, but now city tax dollars are being used to supplement deficits within their budgets. Am I right? Someone tell me I'm wrong. Tanya, John, tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's what was, if I'm hearing correctly, that 134 is being paid for this fiscal year, because we were under the understanding that it was paid last year.
Well, it's on the hit list. I'll defer to our meeting when we bring everybody in. But, and I apologize.
Yeah, so,
it's a justifying the way I'm voting right now, but it's a little bit above and beyond what this grant is about. Although this grant shows previous deficits.
Well, I can also state that the police department gave back $180,000 from our budget from last year for this year.
Joe?
Yeah, one second. I just want to write that note down. I got to figure that one out. So, yeah, okay. I just want to make some just real brief points, just to step back for a second, Mr. Chairman, because I actually like this discussion. I think it's fairly positive. One, through the chair to Tanya. Tanya, you mentioned that you've had the conversation with the mayor. What results so far?
We actually just briefly discussed it, and I'm about to send him an email just asking for authorization to be able to go on and do that to the fund accounts. If you'd like, I can copy you on it.
Oh, yes. You can happily copy me. That's for sure.
Okay, will do.
You might want.
How about the whole finance committee, if not the city council itself?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one thing. And then I got to say, even though I know there's a little tension here, I think this is fairly positive. For my part, I appreciated Sergeant Hart's comments that I think the idea is great to maybe to tell the partners and other vendors, May 15th is a cutoff, and if that's a new policy, that's a sign of a pretty strong internal control, Sergeant. So hopefully your department will consider that, and your partners will understand it, and the city taxpayers. But I think you're onto something there. So whether we had this conversation last year or whatever it is, we can't fix it, what happened last year, but we can fix it going forward. And I think your suggestion, Sergeant, if I may, has a lot of merit. Then the other one is to our auditor, which, again, Councilor McGiverin, this is just a great, I think just another shining example of city council appointees that, just really shining examples of great city employees. I think what I heard the Ward 5 counselors say, and what I think we've all said before, is that we've got to have a reconciliation on these accounts, and we've got to have a reconciliation in a timely fashion. And so what I heard the auditor say is actually beyond that. But the flagging thing, which he's suggesting, that's almost past that's almost like grant management, really. So I'm very excited to hear about that. And final comment is that I really look forward to having somebody's mic shut off, but I also look forward to have a timely response from the mayor on this. It's just vital. And if we don't get a timely response, what would be a timely response if I made through the chair to the auditor? What's a timely response? What is it? December 30th, January 31st? When do you expect to hear on this? So you can set up your end of things, Tanya.
I would hope, since we had the discussion, it would be fairly quick.
Okay, so by the end of the month.
Day or two, I would hope.
Say that again?
I would hope within a day or two he would respond. We've already had the conversation, so.
Within a day, okay, within a day or two. So the finance chair is hearing this. I'm hearing this. Other councilors are hearing this. I'm sure the city council president is watching this, as he always does. He watches the tape, and so we can certainly get some the rest of the city government in line, and we'll hear from the mayor. I know the mayor's working hard, as he always does, but hopefully he has a moment to get back to you and green light this. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy. Jim, you're muted. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Councilor McGiverin. And I too am enjoying this conversation. And I don't think that it's so much. I don't think there's so much tension. In fact, one of the things you learn in leadership programs many years ago, positive tension can only help organizations. Mainly focusing on the private sector.
Hold on a second.
You want me to hold on, Councilor Barney?
No, he muted.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry, Jim. You're okay.
I thought he was liking my point about positive tension. But in all fairness to Sergeant Hart, I think this is maybe a couple of pay grades above him. I think that this conversation, which is a good one, should be brought to the table of maybe the finance committee, also Tanya, the mayor, and the chief of police. But not only in this department, but conversations like this in all the departments, because we certainly should get on the same page with all the vendors, making sure that we can't deficit spend. We do it. However, it'd be so much cleaner if we didn't have to do it. But I'm enjoying this conversation. All right, thank you.
Councilor Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really think this is a great conversation, and Councilor Bacon makes some great points with our auditor, and I'm really glad to hear that the auditors looking outside to other departments, other auditing departments in surrounding cities to see what they do. And sometimes there's solutions that are just right before our eyes that we maybe don't see what other people are doing and how it's working to get things done. I think this is a great conversation. As Councilor Burley said, what happened last year is past. We got to move forward, and whatever we can do to correct this issue so we don't get in the hole again next year. As Councilor McGiverin said, $2 million is quite a bit of money to help pay some of our bills coming up for the next 6 months. From the overtime fund or for people that are retiring. I know we're going to be shortly hearing from the police department on people that are leaving, and of course quite a bit of money that they'll be looking for. So that money would really come in handy for that. So hopefully we can get this resolved, and it's really some great progress when people start thinking and asking some really good questions about how things can get done better in city government. So thank you.
Dan, are you representing the chief of police tonight?
Yes, and if I could just touch on that, like I said earlier, this year I had some personal issues where I wasn't able to put in for some reimbursements. In addition, the Department of Justice revamped their entire grant process and reimbursement process. So a lot of that was on hold for for several months going through, and it's still, they're still trying to work out some of the kinks on it. So it's a whole new system as far as reimbursing and reporting, doing financial reports and programmatic reports. So that's kind of like the reasons for maybe some of those deficiencies or deficits showing. However, those are going to get reimbursed. And to you, Counselor McGiverin, I can understand your frustration. Tanya and I have talked and talked about getting together to work together on how to revamp and make some new policies for grants for the city, because the ones that were in place were kind of vague and didn't really outline too much. However, this, you have to understand it is a process and it does take time. And I know last year you were expecting everything to turn around and have all the deficits wiped out. However, last year we didn't have enough money to pay for all the deficits, which is why you're seeing that 134,000. If we cleared out all our deficits from last year, then how did this 134 continue to this year? So what I'm saying is there's still deficits on the books, and I think it's going to take time. And I give Tanya credit because she was left this mess. And in the past, these deficits would just go from year to year to year to year. And in the past, some of these grants never had individual funds. They kept the same commingling fund accounts. And that was some of the issues that we first got into. But I think it's going to take time. And like in the past, we used to have our free cash in September. Now here we are going into January, year 2, where we're looking at getting free cash now. So I think it's going to take time for those deficits. And I think we're on the right track of getting those deficits paid down. And I think next year, you're going to probably see a lot more free cash coming in due to those deficits and those grant funds being eliminated and flagged for no use. So,
Sergeant, I just want to address that. First of all, but any frustration I'm showing, I don't mean to take it out and point it at you. This goes far beyond one person. This goes far beyond a system. It goes to something that 12 months ago we were promised was steps were going to be taken. John, you and your family, our hearts go out to your year. You had an incredibly tough year that not one of us would want to have gone through. And trust me, we understand that. And by no means am I blaming you alone or blaming you at all. You know, it's just, it is a frustration on my part that I openly shared last year. And it's not just with the police department. It goes far beyond that. The system is simple. The city has a chief financial officer. The position is called the mayor. The city has an auditor that doesn't manage these grants, but has to report and work with an outside auditor, which we are required by law to have an independent study each year of our fiscal years. The outside auditor also is part of the calculating of free cash. And if they see deficits in one account, they will let DLS know that, you know, this is not free cash because the city has not corrected deficits from this year and from prior fiscal years. And that's part of what we learned last year. And it's not just the last 2 years. You hit it right. This has been going on for a long time, and DOR is fed up with us. And that's why they're making us use this, what we call free cash, in a way we don't want to use it. But I can understand where they're coming from too, when this is not being corrected over and over again. By no means is it just you, and the chief was invited tonight. The reason I asked you, are you representing him? I'm just explaining why I'm voting on the grants now, because I think it happened last year too. You just happened to be the first one in the on deck circle after we heard what happened with the deficits and what DLS made us do with free cash. The chief was invited not only for this tonight, but he's also invited for the next item, which is, I see our fire chief just joined us, but the next item is to talk about overtime within the police and fire department budgets, which is part of the frustration is we don't have any money for the rest of the year. You know, so I don't know how both departments are going to survive, but I'm jumping ahead to the next item. But again, I don't mean to take this out on you personally, and I apologize for that. But
No, it's not
it's on
taken.
the table right now, and we thank you for what you do. Is
Thank
there
you,
anything
and-
left on this this item? Councilor Sullivan, did your hand go back up?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Councilor Leahy, 1 minute. Councilor Mike?
Okay. Thank you. And this time I'm going to put my hand down ahead of time so it's not up afterwards.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
And to Sergeant Hart, I want to echo everything that Councilor McGiverin just said too. You know, you're the face of the department in these issues, and I don't want you to feel anybody's picking on you. These are matters. This is part of our job also, is, you know, some oversight. And all of these grants, they come with the terms and conditions. It's to set up a fund and account for the expenditures. All right. And Sergeant Hart, I think you do a great job of bringing in a ton of money and a ton of grant writing for the city, but the department has to do a better job of accounting for the expenditures. All right. And I think that's too much to be asking of you, and there's got to be some accounting for that. And I think that's a question that the chief has to answer. All the talk I keep hearing, we keep coming back to vendors and partners and all that, but this particular grant has nothing to do with any vendors or any partners. It's strictly about overtime. And I'm very concerned about the patrolman not putting in for it. Because as we've said before, we're getting half the amount of coverage on these traffic enforcement grants as we should be getting. So the thing I might suggest to the committee is that this particular one, we table it and also give a chance for the patrolman, the president of the patrolman's union, to come in and address this, why the patrolmen are not putting in for this, you know, this kind of extra pay when it's available to them. What is it about these traffic enforcement grants that they don't like? So I'd make a motion to table.
Councilor Leahy had his hand up. Jim, are you all set?
No, I just had one last thing. I was going to actually go in the same manner that you had, Joe. It was so Sergeant Hart. So I think you're doing a fantastic job. You do a great job. You are the face of the police department in these meetings, and I do, and I feel bad for some of the incidents that have happened in the past. You know, not only are we colleagues on this, but we're also friends. So, but having said that, who fills your shoes when you're not around? Because the way I look at it is we're all cogs in the wheel. So Jim Leahy is here one day. He's not going to be here, but somebody else is going to be filling in, not filling in, but taking, you know, going in my shoes. We should all know what exactly everyone else is doing, that sort of thing. So when you're not around, who is doing your job for you?
There is no one at this time doing grants.
So hypothetically, you won the Mega Millions and you drop your keys tomorrow morning and you take off to Aruba or wherever you plan to go. There's going to be a learning curve for the next person. There's going to be kind of so walk me through that. God forbid, or not God forbid, hopefully you do. You win the Mega Millions, Mega Bucks, you're gone. You know, who's going to take over your position?
Well, there would be a training period, and we have discussed it with the and Captain Pratt, my supervisor, about getting someone in to start training. But I wouldn't leave the department without.
Well, it's easy to say, Sergeant, without not having the $270 million. I'm sure you'd be long gone, and I would be sending you the best wishes. But we should have some sort of, you know, there should be some steps in order, just, you know, knowing the amount of information you have. You know, I say this with all departments. I mean, we have some great people. We have like Dave Conti in the water department. He's one of the best I've ever seen. But when he's gone, we should have somebody that's going to be able to step up and fill his shoes. I know it's going to be hard to do, but we should have this in all the positions. I guess that's all I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand.
Thank you. I'm all set, Joe.
Joe's on mute and he's gone.
Oh, all right. So, do you want to entertain a motion?
I don't know how we do that with Joe missing.
Well, I mean,
Joe's back.
I just got that.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry.
I just wanted to I just wanted to address to Councilor Leahy that the chief and I did talk, and we did have a process in place where we started to put out. He actually put out an email to see if anyone was interested in learning the grants, and we did start the process, and we did have some individuals put in, and then COVID came, so that's kind of where it's at right now.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant.
Okay,
You're
there is the motion on the floor is to adopt, which is
No, the motion, I made a motion to table, Joe.
that was not seconded.
All right.
So the motion on the floor is to adopt. There's no second to table. Is there any further discussion? On the motion to adopt, all those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
That's 3. All those against, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the vote is 3-2. That recommendation will go to the city council. John, are you representing the chief on the overtime issue?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we're gonna go to
Motion to take 5 off the table.
item number 5. It's an order filed
Second.
by Councilor Murphy. On that motion, we read the order first. Councilor Murphy, Councilor Sullivan are on the agenda as filers. That the police and fire chief appear before the finance committee to document how much of the police overtime, total of $266,682 expended through the end of October, was to cover for vacation, sick time, injured on duty status, and grant related detail. The same information is requested for the fire department of expenditure of, I think it's $157,305 through October. In both cases, how many persons per shift being absent leads to the use of overtime. The goal of this order is to determine if we are at our most cost-effective staffing levels without jeopardizing public safety. Quite the order, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Sullivan. But on the, if I could defer to, we have Chief Peskopowski is with us, and Sergeant John Hart is representing the police department.
Yep.
So if I could just defer to the makers of the orders first, and then we can ask the chiefs to make a report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, again, first of all, I do want to emphasize the goal of the order. I think we use enough overtime, and I just kind of did some calculations with just these things. If we multiply these numbers by 3 in terms of overtime used for the year, and then I kind of took a patrolman and a firefighter and took their salary plus the benefits. In some of these cases, we could have another 6 to 7, 8 firefighters or patrolmen. And so my goal here is, I want to thank Chief Peskopowski. He called me the other day to go over some of his numbers, but my goal is to make sure that if we can staff and have more patrolmen or more firefighters and do it within our budget so that we do not have to call in as much overtime, potentially we could have better cost-effective protection in both departments. And so I just wanted to know, related to those kind of things that we talked about, Councilor Sullivan asked me to include the grants, and I would certainly go along with that. but I would just like to know and I know the fire department has four shifts or 4 details, and I'm assuming the police department has 3, but if we could get how many officers are on duty on each of those shifts and what it takes to bring in, how many are out, what would it take for us to have to bring in overtime? And again, my goal is if we had 2 more patrolmen on the first shift and 2 more on the second, 2 more on the third, would that have cut 50% of overtime? And if so, we probably would end up being better off. And the other issue in terms of overtime, and I looked at some of the hours, is certainly, for a while, overtime doesn't lose any effectiveness, but at a certain point, the more work you're doing, the longer hours you're serving, and if it becomes repetitive, you also get to the situation where potentially you're losing effectiveness in very crucial functions. So that was the goal of the order, and I want to emphasize I am not criticizing anyone. I am just trying to find if we can be in a better situation by actually hiring more people up front and therefore spending less on overtime. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan, did you want to add anything, or should we go to the chiefs?
I'll wait. I want to hear what the chiefs have to say.
Chief Preskopowski, you're with us. We thank you for joining us. Would you like to make some opening remarks?
Sure. Like Councilor Murphy said, I did reach out to him the other day to go over some statistics and some data that I had in regard to this order. I will say this is kind of a deep order. We did only receive it on Wednesday before Christmas, and to put something together of this magnitude is a little difficult. I did the best I could with the time frame that I had. It was kind of a deep dive because we don't really track things according to benefits and what people are off on and things like that. But I did the best I could. I had to dig into some slips and some things like that and do some deep diving into some data. But I understand the order. I'm all for adding more people to the fire trucks and fire apparatus. As we all know, we can all have the best trucks and the finest equipment, but it's still human beings and human capital that are putting the fires out and, going to the JAWS calls and going to the hazmat calls and, going to the medical emergencies and, doing all the things that we expect the fire department to do. It's human capital that does that. And, that's where I'm coming from with this. And I agree with Terry Murphy. I'd love to have more people on apparatus. I would love to not have to hire as much overtime as we do, but certain things demand that I hire overtime, and staffing levels are one of them. And, I don't want to be unsafe sending guys out, and, staffing levels need to be maintained, and they're there for a reason. They're there for the safety of the firefighters. And that's where I'm coming from with that.
Could I just ask a question?
Councilor Murphy?
Thank you. And Chief, we did talk, and you have my utmost respect, and you are up front all the time, and I appreciate that. I think we talked about, if I'm not mistaken, in the 4 shifts, it was 25, 25, 23, and 24. Was that it?
Right now, as we sit today, Group A has 24 with 1 person out. Group B has 25. Group C has 23 with 2 people out. And Group D has 25. When I say people are out, I'm saying there's firefighters or officers that are out on injured on duty, and they've been out for quite some time. Okay. And that really affects our staffing levels, as you're well aware, because that drops us immediately, and then people still have contractual benefits to take. So that really brings us down into that overtime level.
Correct. So, I mean, at 24, that would if you had 24 and each was assigned to an apparatus, you would have 4 per piece. And I know two apparatus have to have 4. So if you had a couple of people, let's go to the 23 on C. So you're down to 23, or is it down to 21?
It's down to 23. If those 2 people come back, they'll be at 25.
Okay. So at 23, you're already, if you have 3 people, 2 people on vacation, 2 people sick, you have to have overtime.
Correct.
Okay. And what is your level of firefighters right now?
We are at 77 total. We're budgeted for 80.
And while you're budgeted for 80, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I will anyway, because
Thanks.
you know, I think you know where I come on this. So, and you are going to have some retirements, correct? You're expecting some retirements.
I'm expecting some, correct.
And you need to have a certain number to continue to get the federal grant. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So, if let's say you had 3 retirements, just to throw that, so that would get you down to 74.
Yep.
And I know we talked about civil service list and things along that lines and trying to get people, but I mean, again, I go on the idea that if you had 80, and I'll go to 84, you would basically have pretty much 26 or 27 on almost every shift.
Correct.
And my speculation is you would far less have to use overtime. And that's what I'm trying to find out with these. Am I correct in that?
Well, your assumption's correct. It's just there's so many things that play into that number. It's not a static number, obviously, because people get hurt. It's a dangerous job.
Yep.
It's always happening. So we can't always say we're going to have 27 people showing up every week. It just doesn't happen that way. People get hurt all the time. You know, people have contractual time off. People go to the fire academy. You know, things happen during the year, which puts that number in flux. It brings it down. Sometimes it's up. Sometimes it's down. Sometimes it's up.
No, I understand that, and I certainly respect that. But if we had, and I think you froze, Chief, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I don't know if the Chief is still with us. Are you still with us, Chief?
I'm still here.
Okay. I lost you there. You look like you froze. Not good for a firefighter to freeze.
No, we don't freeze.
But again, if with the additional 6, if you were at 27, I know you need to have 20 for a shift, right?
Yep.
So that would mean that basically almost 25% of that group A would have to be out for you to have overtime. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I appreciate the injured on duty, and I certainly don't want someone coming in a risky job and being in a situation where they're unable to perform at maximum ability. And obviously people get vacation and sick time, and that has to be planned into it. And I understand that as well. But right now you've got very little cushion.
Correct.
And therefore overtime becomes, in effect, your only option, because you have to have at least 20. And let me, so if you had someone who ordinarily works on the Quint, which you always will have 4, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's go to one of the other, let's go to an engine, and then you're down to, you had 4 on one engine, but only 2 on the other. Would you just transfer someone from one engine to the other, or would you have overtime?
Depending on if we had staffing levels above 20, we'll detail people all over the city.
Okay.
To move. Yeah, we won't hire to fill a certain spot and be heavy somewhere else. We'll distribute personnel throughout the city to stay at the 20 and keep everything open without hiring overtime.
Okay, so even though they might ordinarily work at headquarters, they would go to the Whiting Farm Road station if they need be.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And I'm sure I'll have more questions, but I do appreciate all of the information you've given me. And I'm just advocating that we consider hiring more people. And I think when we do, we have better protection. We have safer safer for firefighters, safer for the residents, and I don't think we have to spend I don't think we have to spend any more money.
Counselor Sullivan.
Yep. Thanks. Thanks, Chief, for being here tonight. The only questions I really have for the fire department, there's nothing around the use of grants or anything. It's just the injured on duty portion of it. If I understood from previous conversations over the last couple of years, sometimes they're also put on light duty.
Correct.
But for our own accounting purposes, they're listed as injured on duty, so that somebody can fill in for them.
No, I think if someone's out on IOD, injured on duty, and then if their doctors release them to a modified light duty, they come off that injured on duty status and go back on regular pay.
Okay, that answers my first and most basic part of the question, because one of the things that's come to my attention is that the way it's set up in the MUNICIPal system, when somebody's injured on duty, they're paid through, in your department, it's called Code 532, yep, which is directly tied to the 51180 line item, which is the injured on duty. And what's key here is that line item is exempt from federal taxes and state taxes. So, you know, I think what we have to be careful of, there's a bit of a enticement for a bigger paycheck to be injured on duty. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about and want everybody to be aware of. And
I monitor that like you wouldn't believe, Counselor. I keep an eye on it, and there's some contractual things that I have to live within, but I constantly have my eye on that.
Yep, and pretty much the part about the light duty was, you know, more than half of that equation. So thanks for your answers on that.
No problem.
Sergeant Hart, did you have anything to add on behalf of your chief?
Yeah, as far as the grant part of it, like I said earlier, no grants are paid through by the overtime line item, so that's not affected at all. And he did say that the timing issue from just receiving it to now is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to try and figure out with all the different variables included. And I know in years past we had this conversation, and I know we put in, I think, for a couple of budgets for an analyst and a crime analyst, and didn't get that. But it really is almost impossible to figure out, because you'd have to go back for each day and each shift to kind of figure out whether they're on injured on duty, whether they're on vacation. There's so many different variables to come up with and say, well, this is the reason why we had to pay overtime. It's just almost impossible to do. Some of the things also is like when we have new patrolmen in the academy, they're there for 6 months. They're getting paid, and those are 6 spots that aren't filled that may have to get filled on overtime. And that's just another variable, not to mention all of the contractual obligations. So he would need some time, and at best give you a maybe, because even with that, there's just going to be, well, what if? You can what if it all day long. So it's kind of a hard solution to come up with. But I can say for overtime, I know probably, I think the past 4 years, we didn't come back and ask for overtime in our budget. We're hoping not to again this year. And like I say, every year we're hoping. But if you look at our overall budget compared to our overtime budget's been cut for the past 4 years, and now it's down to 250 that we got. And again, we're hoping to cover that for the rest of the year. Whether that happens or not, that's another story. But that's our intention. That's our fiduciary responsibility that we try and achieve each year, is not to come back and ask for more money and try and live within our budget. And if you look at our budgets for the past 4 or 5 years, it hasn't gone up substantially. However, pay raises have gone up, and we've still been able to maintain and live within our budget.
If I could ask both our guests, what you have left in this year's overtime accounts and what you think your needs are going to be to get through the rest of this fiscal year.
Chief, you can go first.
Okay, John. So that's a good question, Councilor McGiverin. So as you're all aware, that I originally put in for 400,000 for the budget. That was cut by the mayor to 3, and it was cut again by the council during budget hearings to 2. Currently, I've had to move some money through some unspent funds in the firefighter account. So currently I'm sitting on 195,323.84 as of today. That's not calculating the Christmas holiday into that calculation. But that's where I sit right now. It's going to be very, very close to the end of the fiscal year. With my calculations, we're averaging about 16,000 a pay period, and with that calculation, that's putting it right on the number. And that's problematic because that's not calculating in a structure fire, mutual aid to other communities that have problems, COVID. And here's a whole other problem that really hasn't been addressed. No one really knows.
Good, sir. How are you?
No one really knows the outcome of the CARES Act and how and what is in this new bill. And if COVID-related overtime for first responders is even in there, which is problematic. We're lucky enough to go through the last 9 months or so with the
yes, thank you.
We've had to expend.
I didn't realize you guys don't have a phone number down here.
Hey, hold on a second.
Jim?
Okay, we're all set.
We've had to expend about $25,000 out of that CARES Act for COVID-related overtime. I mean, we really got hit hard, in November and the beginning of December within the department, and we were able to offset those funds, not take money out of our operational overtime account, but we were able to offset it through the CARES Act, which was a big help. But I don't know what is in this new bill, if there's anything. If I have to spend money out of my normal overtime budget for COVID-related overtime, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble. We're moving into vaccinations. We're moving into a good period. We're not there yet. And what happens between today and when we get the vaccinations is a mystery. And, we're doing our best to stay healthy. We're doing our best to keep the staffing levels up and answer the calls that we do every day, so the general public doesn't see the difference. But it's troublesome, and we really need to keep an eye on this.
Chief Jeff, thank you. I think you just described 2020 across the board, and it's a point well taken. We have a lot of questions we've been asking for 6 months, and the city's been asking for 6 months, and still waiting for answers from the state, from the federal government, and I hope it comes soon, so at least we can plan out the rest of the 6 months we have to get through. Sergeant Hart, did you want to add anything, numbers or?
I know kind of echo what Chief Preskopowski said. In addition, I would just like to add all those COVID things. In addition to that, we've had surge events with murders and homicides, and also riots and the protests that we had to deal with and hire for. So it's kind of hard to say exactly how much we're going to need moving forward. But like I said previously, our hope and our intention and our fiduciary responsibility is to try not to come back and ask for more money. We're trying to live within our budget for this fiscal year.
Thank you. A couple of hands are up. I think Councilor Tallman was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. This is to Chief Freskopowski. Thanks for the work you guys are doing, you men and women in the fire department. And I totally agree with Councilor Murphy about it'd be great to get some extra help. But I know in some cases it's tough to hire people if maybe you don't have a civil service list, if there's a point where you can hire right now. And also you stated that even if you get the extra bodies, sometimes things come up where are totally out of your control, which you can't, provide. People getting sick, COVID, people getting injured. It's a difficult job that you're doing. And thanks for the numbers of the people on each apparatus and then the number of firefighters that you have to work with. And, the numbers are really, as you said, I mean, you're open and honest with us. If something comes up, you have a major fire, you have COVID. And I think that's one thing you brought up too earlier is, it hasn't really been brought up about the COVID and how many people that you've had out, with COVID that you have to replace with overtime. Same with the police department, which is causing a spike probably in overtime also. And the other mention, if you could sort of explain, we just had a couple of transfers recently on people that are buying back their time. And I'm sure you've had firefighters that actually haven't been taking time off and during the beginning, and now they possibly are taking time off, which is also causing an overtime. Can you explain that a little bit for the council?
That's a great question, Counselor. So the fire department, we work, our benefits work January to January. And normally our vacation time and our contractual benefits are split into 2 fiscal years, right? So, but the first half, going back to last January, COVID hits in February, right? No one really starts to take time off because there's nothing to do. I'm thankful that they came in. They answered the bell. They came in under some pretty adverse conditions. They worked under some adverse conditions, but they didn't take any time off. So roll that into starting in June 30th. All these employees have contractual time off now, and now they're starting to use it, which they're entitled to. And, that's when the overtime starts to come up. So you couple that with a lower amount to start with in overtime in the budget, couple that with people taking all their time off in that fiscal year, that's where we're at right now. It's been difficult.
Yeah, I appreciate that to get us the public and us a better understanding, because once you have people starting to take time off and you have to have the bodies on the apparatus, and then you could just get 1 or 2 sick calls on a ladder or on a truck, and now you're all of a sudden not wanting to spend that overtime, but you're sort of forced to have the safety of the firefighters and the public. So I appreciate the work you do as a chief, and for your members that do the job day in and day out under very difficult conditions. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Sullivan, then Councilor Graney.
I'll defer to Councilor Graney if you'd like, Joe.
Councilor Graney.
Yeah, just quickly to ask both the chief and Sergeant Hart, how many retirees are you expecting within the not too distant future this fiscal year?
Chief, go ahead.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
How many retirees from the fire department are you expecting within the next fiscal year, Chief? And the same goes to Sergeant Hart in the police department.
Right. So I have, as of today, I have one candidate for disability retirement, which is in the works. It's in the process of moving forward. I should have a resolution on that, hopefully within the month. And then there's a possibility, I don't have a letter of intent yet, but I you know, my feelers are saying there might be one more sometime in the spring.
So retirement is not going to be an issue with your department this year then?
I hope not, but you know, Councilor Graney, people can retire at any time, and sometimes you know about them. Those are the good ones. And sometimes you don't know about them, and they just kind of spring up.
Yeah, there is a notification. What's the notification requirement?
There really isn't any.
No, by contract, there's no. They don't have to give you 30 days, 60 days, or something.
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Sergeant Hart.
So, yes, Councilor Green. So we're anticipating now 6 retirees for this fiscal year.
Ow.
You have replacements in the academy or going into the academy?
We do have officers in the academy. Not to replace those, obviously, because they have to retire first. So they haven't retired. But we did, I believe, budget for 5, had one unexpected. And, you know, we did have some budget cuts in the beginning of the year for those buyback line items. But again, we're going to try our best to see if we can do what we can to live within our budget.
Well, so 6, you're planning on 6 retirees. Oh boy. All right. Thanks, Sergeant Hart.
You're welcome.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yep. Thanks. So, Sergeant Hart, first of all, I don't think it's fair that some of the questions that we're going to put out here, or I'm going to put out right now, that you're the one that has to answer them. The chief should really be here to answer these. And the first one is, I've done a little look at the total hours that are being worked by some people in the department. All right. And 3,130 hours, 3,560 hours, 3,549 hours, 3,623 hours. Some of these people are average anywhere from 62 hours to 70 hours a week. All right. Now, number one, that's not safe for them. That's not safe for the public. It's not safe for their fellow officers, for anybody to be working that number of hours. So this is something that really needs an in-depth look inside the department. The other concerning thing about it is some of the people, and once again, don't worry, I'm not going to use any names here, but I don't understand how someone that has 336 hours of injured on duty is still capable of working 859 hours of overtime. All right. So I've got some of the same concerns that Chief, the fire chief put me at ease with, but I think we also need to look here if we're not also incentivizing a certain type of behavior also with this line item, code 106 in the fire department, where injured on duty is once again exempt from federal and state taxes. All right. So that's a concern. And the total number of hours being worked is a concern. And then it also ties in with that amount of overtime being paid. And that's just the very top ones. There's still tremendous number of hours being worked by a lot, but those are the 6 worst ones out there. That it's also not allowing in the budgetary process to have the proper staffing available also. And it just, I think it's something that needs a real internal audit done of what's going on there. That's my comment.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Sergeant Hart, do you know how many police officers all the way through the ranks are assigned to each shift?
I don't know that number offhand.
Okay. Do you know what the minimal level for a minimal public safety is in each shift?
I know as far as patrol goes, I believe it is 8 patrolmen and 7 patrolmen and 2 supervisors. No, 8 patrolmen and 2 supervisors.
On each shift?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And I'm again, I'm not trying to get into but if we get a grant, and I know the grant, and I'm all, as you know, I went down and met with the people on Ray Street, and I am wholeheartedly endorsing what's being done there, but that's all being paid by grant, correct?
Correct. So
the police officers that are there, I'm assuming somewhere in the city budget, their positions are being paid for somehow.
Correct.
We're just transferring money from what they would have got out of the salary there and paying someone else to work overtime.
Correct. If it's needed, yeah.
Okay. So there are cases where the grant money, by creating a function outside of the regular day-to-day police department, can cause us to spend city funds, not grant funds, but city funds, in terms of overtime to cover their being on other functions, grant functions, if you will. So there is some cost that relates to that. So, and again, I appreciate Sergeant Hart coming in, and I also, you know, I appreciate we did it, and I was hoping we'd actually have a little more time, and I know we didn't give them a lot of time to prepare for this, either chief. So I appreciate the fact that they're trying to do this, and I certainly will recommend that we table this and give them a little more time to really do this. But one of the other concerns I have with the fire department, and as we get retirees, I mean, if you're running a business, and we're running a business of service, in this case, the service is public safety. If you're running a business and you got key people that are retiring, you don't wait for them to retire and then, all right, let's go try to find someone to replace them. If you're going to run an efficient operation, you plan for those people retiring, and you bring in people to be ready to work and take their place and probably work with them for a while so that we are effective and efficient. And I mean, it drives me nuts when we're going to have 6 retirees, but we can't get new police officers, or we're going to have firefighters retiring, but we can't replace them until after. And then that process takes how long? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, who knows? I know right now with Chief Preskowski, in terms of the fire department, they've been looking to try to hire, if I'm not mistaken, Chief, I think you told me a few months, and we're still trying to figure out how to get a list to do that. So, right. I mean, those are issues in terms of how do we provide the protection, and also how do we just keep maintaining an effective and efficient level, and to have vacant spots because we can't get someone in until that other person is actually gone. That is certainly not an effective way to do it in terms of the service, and I'm really not sure it's an effective way to do it financially. And one last comment, or one last question that goes to both, and I could be totally wrong here, but I'm assuming a firefighter or a police officer that wants to go on vacation files for an approval to go on vacation. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, there is some control. And obviously, we don't want to be denying people their chance to take vacation. And I'm going to make an assumption, and I could be wrong, but that while seniority probably plays a role, we also try to make sure that a senior doesn't keep bumping off the juniors.
Correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure on that. And then, again, I think I'm hoping when it's all said and done here that we table this, give both chiefs a chance to really look at it, because I do think if we look at it from our perspective, we know we did overtime here, and we know we had these people on vacation those weeks, then at some point there's got to be a connection to how much of it was because we had people on vacation and we don't have enough people so that when someone takes a vacation, we have to replace them. And that's really the goal that I'm trying to get out of the order, is to find that number. And the last thing I'll say, and again, it goes to the fire department. I know that the chief is worried about being short, and he's got every right to be. And we need to do whatever is necessary to be able to get either a hiring list from civil service or an ability to hire outside of civil service if it's necessary. But we've got to get firefighters in there so that we're not spending extra money and we are getting the most effective fire protection, the most effective police protection that we can get. And that's the goal of my order. And I appreciate Chief and Sergeant, I appreciate your thoughts. And again, my goal is to make it better, not to challenge you in terms of trying to give you a detail, but I think the detail would help understand it. Thank you.
Counselor, can I?
Chief,
So we're trying to get that civil service list. Because of COVID, the state was not giving the entry-level firefighter exam for a long period of time. They decided this year to give the LPAT, which is the physical abilities portion of the test, to give that, and then take smaller classes of people and administer the written exam to them, possibly 10, 20 at a time. And this is an exam that like 7,000 people take, okay? So you can imagine the backlog of that written exam. So they're promising us a certified list by February 15th. I am, as you can imagine, chomping at the bit to fill my vacancies. So, I'm trying to hold their feet to the fire, but we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Chief.
Real quick to Sergeant Hart, John, just an update, which is, I think, good. The ordinance committee is recommending to the full city council for next week that the reserve officers per diem be raised by $3 per hour. I know we talked about this at an earlier meeting because the importance of the police department with reserves and the importance of the fire department with the, their civil service tests, but the reserves come off a civil service test. Can you use those reserves, for instead of overtime? And can you use those reserves on those traffic enforcement grants when patrolmen don't want the overtime?
To answer your first question, yes, we can use the reserves in lieu of overtime, as long as we fall within the contract of the patrolmen's union, and that's one of the reasons we're trying to get a maximum of reserve officers on board. Well, it takes them a little time. They have a little academy to go through, and they go through a training process in the department before they can work on their own. But once they clear all those stages, then we do utilize them to offset overtime. So that helps out, and they are ready to be hired as full-time officers. However, we can't hire someone and have them on standby prior to someone retiring. We need to have someone retire because we can't increase our number of patrolmen more than what was appropriated. So if you appropriate 90 patrolmen in the budget, we can't hire 94 patrolmen just because we know 4 are going to retire soon. So we have to wait till they're off the books before you put new officers on board to stay within that appropriation of officers. As far as overtime on grants, I do believe that they are eligible to work, but again, we just don't have those individuals putting in for it.
Are they invited, I guess, would be my final question.
Yes, I do believe Captain Pratt puts a email out to all sworn officers.
Okay. Can you just check with Captain Pratt on that?
Yes, I will.
Councilor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just writing a note down. Hold on. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for all your service too. Just real quick, because I'm glad we're gonna sound like the maker wants to table this. So my questions are just through the chair to Sergeant Hart. Where is Chief Febo? Is he on vacation or something?
No, he's off. He's off. I'm not sure his status right now.
Yeah, Councilor Bartley, can I say something on that effect?
Yeah, I'm just asking. Yeah.
No, it's just I'm working with as we all are working with our new administrative assistant, and when talking to him about who we invite into orders, I've always said that a department head will oftentimes send a designee, and in most cases that's fine. And I think Councilor Murphy just pointed out that it's very difficult and frustrating. This is related, Terry, to having to be able to train people when someone leaves the job. We're still struggling to pay Ryan when he was working and help training Jeff, in his extra hours at night. But I think Chief Febo's email on this particular order looked more like the chief or a designee. So John, I think he designated you to answer some questions that, my fault, that really should be the chief. You and your grant, you always handle the grants, but on this particular order, I think it goes a little bit above just the your level, John. It goes into the chief's level. David, I don't know if that helps out where you're going, but I just wanted to.
No, I just curious. I didn't hear why John was a designee, but I'm just asking. I'm not. That's all.
Right, and to get to your point, the chief did send me an email asking me to be on this because I did have that grant. In that other issue, he asked for me to relay to the council to table it or give him more time because it was just impossible for him to even try and come up with a number. And that's the only reason why I'm here talking about this.
That's great. So, yeah, and so along those lines, I didn't hear an answer relative to the HPD's current overtime expenditure and then the expected use. So I'm glad we're going to table that because I didn't hear that question answered. So I was kind of hopeful we could. I think I heard it from I know I heard from Chief Preskopowski, but I didn't hear it from Sergeant Hart. So I hope that when we bring this up again in a month or two, Joe, we can get those or whenever you do it, it can get answered. And then my last question is because I was actually I learned a lot tonight, so I've taken a bunch of notes. But one of the things, Sergeant, you gave kind of an exact answer on potential retirees. So is that, Sergeant, something that's a contractual thing, or is that just kind of an understood policy of the department?
No, we do have a contractual thing that states, I believe, to give the chief a notice within 90 days. And I think the spirit on that is so that we'd have money within the budget to pay them out. However, if they were to tell us in May that they're retiring in June, obviously we wouldn't have the money, so we would fall back on that contractual 90 days and say, well, you can't you didn't notify us within 90 days to give us time to go to the council and ask for that money if it wasn't in our budget. So you're going to have to wait till the following fiscal year. So I think that's what the spirit behind that retirement is. But like the chief said, someone can come in tomorrow and say, I'm retiring, or to Councilor Leahy's point, if someone hits the lottery, they can come in the next day and say, I'm retiring.
Yeah. Okay. So that just, thank you. So that just begs a question to Chief Preskopowski. Is that something that we can consider, or should we consider that in your department, to have that be a contractual up? If it's in one department in public safety, can we consider that in another public safety department?
It would be part of negotiations, Counselor. And, you know, if the city's going to bring it up, I mean, I think it makes sense to give time if they really want to get. Can you guys see me? I don't know if I'm timed out here.
We can hear you, Chief. Your video froze, but your audio is fine.
I can see you fine. You're fine.
Okay. You know, it goes to contract negotiations and bargaining in good faith. And, you know, if we could get it in there, I think it only makes sense to, even to the employee, to give notice, really is to their benefit when it gets down to, you know, getting their allotment of money, the buyouts that they get at the end. The more upfront and more time that they can give me to budget it into the that fiscal year's budget only makes sense.
So the answer is yes.
It's not in there.
So the answer is yes. I mean, we don't know why it wasn't put in the contract. We don't know why, because we weren't there. I wasn't there.
Yep.
But that's something that so the answer is yes. You would consider that, and you would consider bringing that to the law department or the law department's vendor for next time there's a contractual negotiation. Is that accurate? Is that fair to say?
It could be part of my package. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Graney.
just to reiterate what Councilor Bartley said, and to Chief, I was absolutely shocked when you said that there is no forewarning, there was no time period that people have to, that there's no contractual agreement. I think every, you know, certainly in the teachers, the cops, just about everybody else has to give a certain notice before they retire. I'm shocked that it's not in there. That's all. And I don't know who negotiated that contract, but apparently somebody did not serve the department well or the city well in that situation. Thank you.
Okay, just, you know, there's no contract on the table now, Chief, but we do have to be careful about, we can't intervene with negotiations.
Correct.
Councilor Sullivan's been patient, and Councilor Murphy. We got to wrap this up.
Yep. Thanks. Once again, I just want to stress that I think it's unfair to have asked Sergeant Hart to answer some of these questions. But my big concern with some of the grants, especially ones that evolve around the task force, right, is how much time is being spent by members of our police department on work that takes them out of town, that's leaving us without feet on the ground here in Holyoke. And how much of that lack of feet on the ground here in Holyoke is forcing us to rely on more overtime again to fill up, to make up for that spot. And I already know what part of that answer is going to be, is that, you know, we're by doing this work, whether it's in wherever in any of our surrounding communities where these guys might be doing the task force work, that we're stemming the flow of drugs into Holyoke. And that we took this large quantity off the streets. But my short answer to that would be, yeah, you took a large quantity off the streets, but it didn't stem the flow of anything and come into Holyoke, right? It's still $5 a bag in Holyoke for a bag of heroin. It's disgusting. And the bottom line result for us is still a lack of feet on the street here. And then, you know, it circles right back to the same thing. We don't have the feet on the street here. We're calling for more, and we're being asked to put in more overtime to put those feet on the street because we have people out assigned to the task force that are working out of town. And those are questions I think the chief has to answer for us and make us comfortable with.
If I may, I can just say a little bit about that. Those officers or detectives on the task force, when they're out in another town, they're not being replaced on overtime. If that narcotics officer is on vacation, someone isn't coming in on overtime to fill his spot. So those bureaus are separate from the shift overtime.
I get that, John, but it's still, I get that totally, but it's still people that are, because we've accepted the grant, they're not feet on the street here, and they're still collecting their salary for being here as well.
What grant are you referring to?
And any of the task force, well, the task force, it could be several grants. I think these are things we need to discuss and talk about with the chief. I don't, unless you're prepared yourself to talk about all of them tonight.
No, I don't know which grant you're talking about.
Well, I'd start with the task force one.
Yeah, that's not a grant that we manage or are involved with.
Well, it's listed as a payroll item.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's why
familiar with that.
I assume we're going to be tabling this so we can get some answers on this, but just it's code 403. This is how it's accounted for, or the grant number or whatever is 403 in the police department. So.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that number.
I know, and like I said, I didn't think it was fair for you to be put on the spot like this. I think the chief should have been here. So that's my statement. And I still believe that is leaving us without the bodies on the street. And it's people that we're still paying salaries for that are spending a good deal of their time outside of the city. That's all I have to say, Joe. I'm done.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, my last one question and one request. And Sergeant Hart, I'll start with the request. Next Wednesday, the 6th of January, and I know I was at the meeting when it was requested to consider a temporary residential facility for people coming off of rehab. I'm wondering if you can make sure that someone from the task force down on Ray Street is aware of that meeting and can potentially come and offer some input into the need and also the results of what they've done before and some of the reasons that things that failed without the residential. So if you can, that's at 6:30 and it's the first item on the agenda next Wednesday the 6th. So if you can convey that to them, I would appreciate that. And then this is just a question, and maybe you can answer this, Sergeant, maybe you can't. Can the shift or the chief or shift command captains, whoever, can they mandate someone to work overtime, or do they have to go out and ask people to do it? And then if nobody does it, I'm assuming we can then mandate it.
I believe that the chief can order overtime, but I think it has to be for an emergency purpose. So I don't believe he can order someone to come in and work a grant traffic detail.
Okay, but he could, if he felt that we were at a level, because several people were going to be out on a shift, that level was going to be too low, he could mandate someone to work overtime.
Well, that's part of the patrolman's contract, and that happens quite often where the following shift is short and officers on the previous shift are held over to work the next shift. are mandated. It's called drafted.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I, Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate if we tabled this because I think there's still a lot of questions and we need to get, and I appreciate the complications of setting the report, but I think we really need to get a full understanding of what causes overtime and if staffing levels have an impact.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy.
Motion
Is
to
there a member
table.
of the committee that will make that motion?
Motion to table item number 5.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to table item number 5 for a future meeting. There's no discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Chief Peskopowski. Thank you, Sergeant Hart. You've been troopers tonight as always. And we appreciate you spending a lot of time with us, and especially this time of year. But we'll continue to work on this one. And again, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you both, guys.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Motion to take item number 6 off the table.
Motion made second.
Second.
Item number 6 off the table. Item number 6 is communication that came back to us from the auditor. I believe everybody has got the email and the copy of it, but it's a detailed listing of some of the pilot payments in lieu of taxes. I put it on the agenda because this was in response to, I believe, Councilor Sullivan had one order. There might have been other orders, but Mike, is this something that you wanted to talk about? I just wanted to make sure we all received it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the question I still have, and I think it's in an order I've got out there, is the pilot program for Holyoke Gas and Electric. A new pilot program was negotiated by the mayor or his designee, I'm not sure which, and approved by HG&E. I'm not certain that was not supposed to come before the city council for approval. I know I've seen pilot programs. If one gets renegotiated, is it supposed to come to us for approval? And that was my question. I'm looking at what was sent to us. It's only through October 30th. So I don't know what has gone on with HG&E. Also in the correspondence back in April, and then again in June, that we had from Deputy Mayor Bloomberg saying that he would get back to us with the details on it, which we never saw. So there you go.
Okay. I think that order was sent to the law department, or at least a copy to the law department, waiting for a legal response or legal opinion on that. And I think I'm not saying it's confusion, but I think the pilot programs that seem to be listed here, and Tanya, maybe you can correct me, are some of them are the solar fields, and the housing authority is here though also, which I believe is what the federal government is willing to pay in terms of having so much taxable property used in their providing of low income housing and in the projects themselves. I know in the past that the gas and electric, the water department, and I don't believe we've ever voted on what's negotiated, but we're always told what's negotiated, and oftentimes whether it goes up or down. But Councilor Sullivan, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my point being, of the 530 that's being accounted here, 400,000 of that, 80% of it is Holyoke Gas and Electric. And those numbers do not add up to what the new number should be, right? Number one. Number two, it was a big part of, I think, $100,000 some odd dollars as to how the budget was balanced to make up the deficit. And number three, it still circles back to the same thing. I believe any pilot program has to be approved by the city council. And and we were told it would be presented back to us, and it never was.
Tanya, do you have anything to add to this?
Actually, I do. And I also am looking for the new pilot agreement I can tell you this, that last year they were paying 88,193.34 for their payments, but this year they're paying 97,662, which tells me there is some type of new agreement. I did pull out the minutes from the vote from, is it the commission? So they are making increased payments, but to date I also do not have that agreement, and I would like it as well.
Any further discussion?
I'll throw one more thing in, Joe.
Yep.
I believe Tanya's right on that may very well reflect that. And this is going from memory here, but from what we were told from our correspondence from the mayor's office, that new pilot agreement was tied to the consumer price index, which is an absolutely ridiculous way to negotiate a pilot agreement. Something that's based, especially in today's day and age, on the increased value of green energy production. To have that, to somehow think that is in any way, shape, or form tied to the consumer price index is ridiculous. So we really need to see what that agreement is, and whether we had any say in it or not.
Okay. I hear everybody. The chair's going to make a suggestion. This again was put here because it was an email that was referred to committee, and it's, you know, for, I think, to receive and to have a discussion. I don't believe it's, you know, complied with, because I think your orders, maybe the legal request, I think, I'm not too sure is in this committee, but it's still out there waiting for a response from the legal department. But I think if we could ask, we could table this, but if we could ask Jeff, if you could just reach out to the gas and electric and ask them to send us a copy of the new agreement, maybe we can start there and further look for answers to your questions.
I can do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Motion it.
Motion to receive and
table.
we'll look for further, you know, we'll bring this up again and try to get with the agreement coming in. Is that okay, Mike?
Fine. But
I just want to adjourn.
One second, Councilor Barley's got his hand up.
I just want to emphasize one last time that regardless of what the number is, right? But what's important here was, did it require council approval or not?
I don't think it did.
That's the legal opinion we'll have to get from Crystal, which is not in this committee. The request is not in this committee, but it should go hand in hand with what we're trying to accomplish and get the answers. Councilor Barley.
Yeah, so that was my point of order, Mr. Chairman. Where is that legal request right now, and what committee, and what's the status of it?
If I can defer that, Jeff, don't mean to dump a lot of work on you tonight, but if you could check on that, it's an order. Mike, you remember when you filed that?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, so. It's probably about 2 months ago. If we can see if we can locate that. If not, I'll check with the clerk's office. I believe it's you know,
August or September sounds about right. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll follow up on that. Any further discussion? The motion is to receive. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. I know we're in between holidays, but I appreciate this because we needed to get a couple answers out for next week. Chair will entertain that final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made, second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Happy New Year.
Stand adjourned.
Happy New Year.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody. Happy New Year.